Welcome to episode 208 of the Reptile Gumbo podcast. How's it going, Katie?
I can't breathe through my nose and I may need tissues.
Breathing's overrated. Hey, there's paper towels.
I'll take the paper towels. They cut the grass at school today and we had extended recess because we did practice testing and I wanted to die by the time I got back inside.
They cut the grass at our school too. I did not go outside.
Oh, it was horrible. My eyes itch. I can't stop sneezing and my nose won't stop running.
Hey to the chat. I see old Anal Side Exotics is over there. Darren. How's it going, Darren? Yeah. What do we got going on? Oh, so we can get into we left on a cliffhanger last week.
We did, but let's do our sponsors.
Okay.
And then we can talk about because we had some bad news, but we've also got some good news and some funny news.
All right, do you want to go with that sponsor?
Yes. So Lil's Shop of Horrors operates a commercial feeder breeder facility based out of San Antonio, Texas. They specialize in rats, mice, dubia roaches, Madagascar hissing cockroaches, and many more. As feeder breeders, they focus on the nutritional needs of the animals that consume them. Nationwide shipping is available on live insects. For frozen rodent shipments, you do need to reach out to check availability in your area. They also do weekly meetups throughout South Central Texas and are aiming to expand their meetup locations this year. So follow them online and keep up to date with their meetup schedule. If you're looking for a place to order, feel free to contact them through any of their social media pages. Look for Lil's Shop of Horrors.
I love Lewis, but the new blurb he sent is like a novel.
Sweet.
We will, Lewis, we're going to look at that again and we're going to refine it. Also, you sent it in all caps.
This is great to post online, though. Beautiful. It's a great job. It's a very well written
novel.
I can't. It's too long.
I was laughing. I was like watching Katie have to sign.
You texted it to me in the middle of testing, and I opened it, and it like was screaming at me because it's all caps. And I was like, "What the hell is your problem, James?"
That wasn't me. It was Lewis. Blame him. But check out Lil's Shop of Horrors for all your feeder stuff. Speaking of Lil's Shop of Horrors, our giveaway. So we did our Girl Scout cookie giveaway this month.
Yay! We had 3 awesome winners. They were so excited.
Thanks to our friends over at Colossal Constrictors for donating cookies, and thanks to our friend Jeff Frederick for also donating cookies. We had 3 winners for Girl Scout cookies this past month,
and they each got 3 boxes.
Yeah, everybody would get 3 boxes of what they wanted. Mm-hmm. And then let's see, it's funny. Darren wants to get the Reddies back to talk Mellors Chameleons. Mm-hmm. Funny you mentioned them. Our giveaway for April is a collaboration. We're going to give away 500 small dubias from our friend Lewis over at Lil's Shop of Horrors. So Lil's Shop of Horrors will ship you 500 dubias. And then the Reddies over at Reddies Rainforest are also giving away a bag of their chow, their feeder chow, their gut load. So you'll get basically the start of a colony of dubias. So if you've ever thought about getting into breeding roaches for your reptiles, you get that and amazing food that they go crazy for.
So I was talking to Amanda Reddy about that food, and she said she gives it to everything that gets fed out to their lizards. So I was like, cool, I'll give some to the superworms at school. They get fed out to everything there. I swear these things have doubled in size since I've given them that stuff.
Oh, yeah, it's great stuff.
It's crazy.
So you'll get a bag of that and 500 small roaches. I will make that post at the beginning of April. What you will have to do is I will have a question there for you to answer. I haven't fully thought of the question yet, but there will be one. And you'll have to go over and like and follow our friends at Lil's Shop of Horrors and the Reddies Rainforest. Both of those. You follow both of those and you answer the question, you're in for a free giveaway for 500. Basically, a starter colony. We're making
you work for it, guys. We're making you work for it. We never make you work for it.
But it's a whole starter colony of dubias. Cool. If you have anything that eats crickets right now, you will love going to dubias much more than crickets. Crickets suck. They're a nightmare. Dubias are so much easier. What are you looking at?
I was looking at the closet because I never go in there, and I can totally use that for storage.
Yeah, that's what closet's for.
No, but like for shit storage, like
I bet we tend to flush that.
I can put bookshelves in there, and we can put more cages in here.
Yeah, I think we're so also.
Okay, so let's talk bad news.
Oh, so
should we bring our guest in for this? I feel bad making him just like sit.
Well, he's off doing stuff. We'll bring him in.
There. Okay.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So I told y'all last week that we had some stuff die, and then we kind of left it off of that when we left the episode. If you've been following along, we had Spanish rib newt babies, about 30 or 40 of them. And one day we came home and our Spanish rib newts were all dead. Or at least
Not all. There's like 10.
they all
still alive.
almost look dead. And so we took a day to mourn that. And then when I went to go clean the tank, I found about 10 that were still twitching. I emptied out the tank, put in fresh water, put those 10 in, and they are doing fine now. We are down to 10. I think what happened was I tried to set up a small little tank for brine shrimp in the tank next to them, inside of a critter keeper, inside of a 10-gallon. And I think the bubbler, the little filter, knocked just enough salt water into the Spanish rib newt tank, and it killed the babies. I think that's why they died.
We're not
I've
sure.
got no other reason as to why.
I mean, we are using the right type of water. We've talked to experts. I mean, I'm considering Fadi an expert. So
yeah. So we lost most of those. Unfortunately, our daughter was pretty upset.
It was rough.
But
at our house
2 nights ago, we got new eggs.
Bunches of eggs. Fun fact: if you leave the eggs in long enough, the male will eat them.
Yeah, he did start eating some. But he did eat the ones that weren't attached to the plants.
That's good.
So maybe
I was going to ask you about that.
They were on the ground.
Separating them.
So I don't know. So that was our bad news last week. We lost a bunch of our Spanish rib newt babies, but we have new eggs coming, and we do have a few babies left that our daughter is raising up to try and sell. And
it's a work in progress. We've never done this. We don't know what we're doing.
We're not amphibian people.
But they are probably one of the most precious things I've ever seen.
Little babies.
They're awesome. Legs. You can watch them grow.
And so that was our bad news from last week. Good news, though. This room, I think, is going to become a pure-on lizard room.
In about 2 weeks, yeah.
I'm getting a blue-tongue skink from our buddy Sean Gray.
Got a lychee coming from Corey Martin.
Are we getting that lychee?
Yeah. I ordered the tank today. Surprise!
Hey, I'm getting a lychee.
I actually told her today you had no clue. So on April 6th, we're going to go visit Reptilandia. And then we're going to pick a lychee up on the way home.
So we'll go out to visit Reptilandia, which I have heard is freaking amazing. So awesome. Graham is in the chat. He said, thanks for the advice on mites. Yeah, he had mites. It's a nightmare, man. Mites are, and for anybody out there, we've talked about it before. If anybody out there, when you hear someone has mites, just like if they just got them, it doesn't mean they have a bad or dirty collection. They just, one mite just can ruin it. And it can happen from anything. You go to a show. When I lived in the dorms, I had a snake that had no mites, and just living in the dorms, I would get mites.
It's because that dorm was gross.
It was pretty gross. Not my room, the building.
The building was like ancient. Like they've torn it down and have rebuilt it.
I love you say ancient. It was built in like the 70s. That's not our 60s.
My dad actually stayed there the first year it was built in the 60s.
Yeah, your dad's old. Was old. All right. Real quick, we should get sidetracked for the giveaway for Lil's Shop of Horrors and the Reddies. Also, real quick, Herbst Reptile shows. Give you a rundown of the shows coming up. Slidell, Louisiana is April 6th, April 7th. Over to Austin, Texas, April 20th, April 21st. We visit Corey over there. West Monroe, Louisiana, May 4th, May 5th. Conroe, Texas, June 8th and June 9th. That's the big one. Come on down to Conroe. Longview, Texas, June 22nd, June 23rd. Back over to Slidell, Louisiana. That was horrible, Katie.
I'm really sorry. I won't do that again.
Oof, that fork on a plate. July 20th and July 21st is Slidell. Sulphur, Louisiana, which used to be the Lake Charles show, and it still is by 3 miles. I mean, it's right next to Lake Charles, but it's now in Sulphur, Louisiana, July 27th and 28th, which we won't be able to make because I'll be in the mountains.
We might
be back.
Swing home through there.
Oh, okay. And then Oklahoma City, Oklahoma is August 3rd, August 4th. So that is the upcoming Herb shows. Also, shout out to VivTech Products. If you need an LED UVB light bulb that will last you for 4 years or more, go check out VivTech Products and order your bulb and use code GUMBO22 to save you 15%, which
have you not really caught on? Because every time you talk about bulbs, I talk about lychees.
No, I had a feeling. I just didn't want to assume.
I love that.
But we had to order bulbs for my new blue tongue from VivTech. I'm also going to try out their new my brain just went blank. It's not mercury vapor. Halogen. Their new halogen bulbs. And their new LEDs are dimmable. So I'm looking forward to having the dimmable LED bulbs. So if you need a great LED bulb that'll last much longer than those cheap ones that you're normally getting from PetSmart or any other pet store, check out VivTech Products. Use code GUMBO22. All right.
I feel so much better.
You've eaten. We've gotten through our sponsors. Let's go ahead and get to our guest.
I normally eat before the podcast, and tonight we were just busy.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
I'm just making sure you're done. Our guest tonight is Anthony Doerrer.
It was so easy for you. Come on.
I got it. There's 17 R's from Revision Reptiles. How's it going? Tony. I'm going Tony from this point on. It's shorter. I'm going Tony.
That's going pretty good. How about you?
Good. We're good.
We have one more day and then a 4-day weekend.
Whoop, whoop.
Beautiful.
Get ready for that nice weekend.
I've wanted to have you on for a while. I think it was our buddy April suggested you way back.
Yeah, we've been playing tag a little bit. I think towards the end of last year. Towards the end of last year, we were playing tag. We were in the middle. I was in the middle of renovating and moving things, so I think we played for tag for a little bit, and it finally connected there. So I'm glad to. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for coming on. You have
April's pretty awesome. She used to be out here in California.
Yes,
and then moved out that way. So she's kind of moved on from what she started with. Tried to get her on anaconda. She didn't appreciate the yellow ones so much. They were a little bitey for her.
She was my co-host forever ago before Katie became the co-host.
Long before me.
Long before you. I miss April.
Yeah. We all know she's your favorite. She knows she's your favorite too.
But you keep a lot of cool stuff. We will talk yellow anacondas, which is funny. We had a show 2 weeks ago, a reptile show, and we did some interviews at the reptile show, and we actually talked to a keeper there who breeds yellow anacondas. So it's just funny. We also have you on, so we'll talk more yellow anacondas.
That one hasn't been released yet, though.
No, that'll go out in probably 2 or 3 weeks, and then you'll hear that one too.
Yeah.
So
probably on the day that our
suck it, Brandon. You're not the first yellow anaconda person we're going to talk to, even though you'll
be the first one that airs. That's what matters.
No, he will, but Brandon won't. But Brandon.
Oh yeah, no, Brandon won't.
He'll have to just wait.
But I mean, he can always go get some ice cream at the Rouse's, and it'll be fine.
For anybody, once you hear the podcast, that makes sense.
You'll get it.
But you do yellow anacondas. We'll talk about that. And I'm just looking at your website right now because you got green trees and tigers, and those are all great. But those aren't the ones I really want to talk about because you do flaccid penis snakes. I like to refer to them.
Sock puppets. Sock buckets, wet sock puppets.
Yeah, I held one once at a show, and I was like, "How is this a thing? How is this the healthy way this thing's supposed to look?" If there's ever been a snake that's not supposed to be out of the water, my God, it's elephant trunk snakes. Those things just look stupid out of the water.
They're so weird that they're just awesome, though.
They are cool. So we will definitely get into that because I'm very interested in how you set that up. And one, it involves water. And I'm anti-water. I'm not doing turtles. I'm not doing anything that needs water. I'm staying away from it because it's a.
Well, it sounds like you were doing water, and it's been a trouble already.
God, it has been those newts.
Those newts have been a learning curve at the Lewis household. Let me tell you.
Never done newts,
all
so
three of us.
Can't comment on that one. No.
I mean, look, it sounds bad. Like they died, and it's horrible and all, but like. Thankfully,
it sounds like at least there's a saving grace at the end of it. It's unfortunate.
Well, the person we had on a few weeks back who did them, he was like, "Oh yeah, don't worry, you'll get more," and he was right. We got like 70 more eggs.
Yeah, and last time she laid eggs, and then 2 days later laid a second batch. Remember?
Yeah.
And we just tossed them all in together.
Well, and then today I came home and she had her on. So these newts, I've explained it on here before, but I'm explaining it. These newts, the way they breed is. You got to see it to believe that it's the real thing because like it doesn't make sense when you say it.
Just don't believe me. I told them about it.
But I watched the female. She was swimming around the tank with her arms up above her head because the male gets below the female and then links his arms up above onto her arms. And then he drops sperm on the bottom of the tank and then slams her vagina onto the sperm. And that's how he gets her pregnant.
The weirdest thing.
I don't understand how that became the evolution of newt breeding. It doesn't make sense to me, but it's what they do because I've seen it.
No, don't understand it either.
It is.
My coworkers were like, Katie, you worked at a zoo. I'm like, I'm telling you, it doesn't line up, but it works.
That's how it's done. I mean, it seems successful. You've got
even the male has these like weird little pads on his arm to like stick to her and hold her in place. And
Brandon Wheeler says that's no fun. I know. I know. It's the weirdest wrestling match you've ever seen, and I don't think there's a winner.
So in my defense, the first time we ever witnessed this behavior, I literally thought they were wrestling because I'm like, no parts are lined up for them to be breeding. They can't be breeding. And this one and our 13-year-old were like, come on, you should know what it looks like when animals breed. And I'm like, no, things weren't lined up.
I just need you to picture that process in any other animal. Just picture any other animal where the male takes the female, he splooges on the ground and then slams her vagina onto it. It's
flow dynamics. That's what it is.
It is odd. So So anyways, let's get into what you keep. We talked about what you keep, but go ahead and kind of give us a run through of what you have, what you breed, and if you have just stuff for fun, because some people just have things that they don't plan on breeding, like my blue tongue. I'm never fucking breeding. Speaking of breeding, I know I interrupted because I asked a question and then I stopped, but I'm never breeding blue tongues because that's another one that scares the ever loving shit out of me.
Oh, because they wrestle.
Well, and I've watched videos where they've ripped legs off.
Yeah.
Like they'll just they grab a hold and then they death roll, and then now you have a three-legged skink. And like, how did evolutionary wise, how is that the way it went? Like, you would think those would have weeded themselves out of the gene pool. Like, oh yeah, he rips off legs, she's not going to have babies with him. But
well, it's just going to weed out her.
No doubt.
Unfortunately, I hate to be tough on it, but that's going to weed her out in the wild.
Oh, it is such a weird process. But anyways, so what all do you have?
So we work with what we work with now are carpet pythons, an array of those. Mainly, one of my preference or the high focus would be poplar carpet pythons. I do have a few coastals and some crosses from some projects that I've been working on for a few years. Yellow anacondas. I have a pair of maclots that I've actually come to really enjoy working with so far. I got them as an interest in a spur of the moment. A friend was getting rid of them, and it was definitely one of those of I've been interested, might as well grab them. And then I've got elephant trunk snakes. So those are what I currently work with. I have worked with in the past, and they're up some blue tegus, black and white tegus. Definitely in the future, if we have the space, we wouldn't mind getting a pair of black and whites. Really enjoyed those. Took a lot of work, but we used to have a pretty, like a 4-foot male, and he was just puppy dog tame, unless you were wearing sandals, and then you kind of thought your feet were mice or something to chew on. But
oh, that's funny. So we have giant sulcata tortoises. They sell them in Louisiana at our house there, but I can't go in their yard with flip-flops if my toes are painted any shade of red or pink or anything, because they always chase after my toes, because sometimes we give them cherry tomatoes or strawberries.
Yeah, the tegus the male tegu or the female tegu would go after toes if you were in sandals. It didn't matter who it was, but outside of sandals, you were good with them. They didn't matter.
That's funny.
It smelled like a road. Worked with leopard geckos and green tree pythons. I think that's the majority.
So the stuff you have,
yep.
The stuff you have is very broad. So what did you start with originally? Like, what was the first thing?
Carpet pythons originally. I had a carpet python, and then directly after that, I ended up getting a yellow anaconda. So the two.
It's a weird jump.
Two are neck and neck. Carpet python I started with, like, for years. My stepmom was afraid of snakes, so I was never allowed to own one. Finally, towards the end of high school, I finally convinced my parents to let me get an animal or a reptile. And I was looking actually at a water monitor, talked my parents into it, was building an enclosure and all of that. And then the day that I was going to go get it, my dad looked at me and he's like, "You've done months of research. You've already built this large enclosure. You're not getting a water monitor. You're ready for it, but you're not ready for it."
That's probably a safe call.
It was probably a good call. I mean, I did a lot of at that time, someone that was literally getting their first one, I had an 8-foot by 3-foot enclosure built for it. So he kind of let me go a little far into it looking back, but at the same time, it was a great call on that behalf. Never got a monitor, ended up going to the reptile store and getting a jungle carpet python.
So what went in the cage? Nothing?
The jungle carpet python actually went in there at first and then started sectioning that down, and then converted another display case that I had that was half the size. So it was a 4-foot by 2-foot enclosure. But
so your work didn't go to waste?
Not completely. We ended up using that. It ended up being the family hutch for extra dishes and overflow stuff at some point.
Nice.
So stuff draped over it. It was good enough. But got into jungle carpet, and then probably 3 months into having it, I went away to my grandparents' house, and my brother was watching it. He ended up putting it outside in a 10-foot, or not 10-foot, a 10-gallon tank.
Oh shit! And cooked it.
Fried it in the California sun. So when I came home, Unfortunately, it was gone, and
Did you kill your brother?
Stepmom was my dad preferenced it before I got home. It was an hour drive home from when he picked me up, and he just preferenced that whole thing.
Oh, that's gotta be a painful ride home.
Had to be nice and just go with it and clean everything up. And then parents wouldn't let me have one. So when I got kicked out, or when I got out of the house and got my own place, I got a carpet python at a local reptile shop down the road and started research on yellow anacondas. Then ended up at about in 2006, I ended up getting a yellow anaconda, my first yellow anaconda.
So why yellows over greens? Because at the time you could have got both, and greens at the time weren't that expensive.
I mean, I'm not a large guy. I'm 5'7". So I'm not a large guy. I never really wanted, and I like and I appreciate Burmese pythons, reticulated pythons, those large snakes. But I never wanted anything that massive, like extremely massive. I know yellow anacondas have that stigma, especially online. They have the stigma of 18, 20 feet-ish. It's come back down to more reality of 12 to 15.
It's like the old coastal carpet length. Coastal carpets get 16 feet. Like, no,
yeah. I mean, I'm not going to say they don't have the potential. They're definitely there. But in my opinion, I mean, a healthy one doesn't have to be that big. So I just kind of really got into that. And again, I went back to, I want this. I'm looking for it. I searched around. None were available they're not exactly, especially in 2006, they weren't exactly readily available. They're not very heavily bred.
Yeah.
So I'd find websites that had things posted, but it wasn't old or not available. So you just had to keep refreshing and kind of going back and searching. So in that time frame that it took to find one actually available, I just kept researching and looking into what does it need? What do I need? And it just kind of got me more into, okay, I want that. Had the access with the local reptile shop to like boas and other pythons. But again, never really, I liked and appreciated the boas, Colombians and things like that, the red tails, the Burmese pythons, the reticulated pythons, just never got heavily into it. And then when I finally got my first yellow anaconda, it was just, I worked with it all the time. So it's like somebody getting their first Burmese python or reticulated python. It was really at that time.
At that time, also, it's a lot of imports. And so, I mean, you really got to like them because they're not the friendliest at that point, you know, in
California, as I said, I find it on websites, ones that, hey, it's a reptile store that has a website and they've got their old ads. So in California, up in the San Francisco area, I believe it is, or Northern California, there's East Bay Vivarium.
Yeah.
So they always had an ad posted, and they were the one that was kind of the teaser between them and Triple L Reptile. They always had an ad posted for sale, especially if you just did a Google search. You'd find that old ad, and it'd come up, and it's okay. I can constantly reach back out, and okay, this is what it costs. Well, I can't get them, so let me look into what it takes to get them. So it was a blessing because the delay gave me the ability to continue researching. But I think at that time, I mean, I was so set on that's what I wanted. I never even really at that time, greens never crossed my mind. When I stumbled upon anacondas at first, I did that general, okay, maybe I want to look into an anaconda. Something about a yellow popped up, and once I saw that, I never even considered it.
You were done. You were done.
I think it was 5 or 6 years later when I got a roommate who was starting to get into the reptiles. When we had a room and I started getting more and more, and the anacondas were getting sized. He kind of went down to the local reptile shop, picked one up and brought it home. And I helped him kind of get it going because it was needed nursing when it came in. So I started to fall for him there, and I highly appreciate him. But then I just don't want the size.
I mean, you got to love Megan's albinos that she has right now.
Oh, those things are gorgeous. I had to go to Tinley just to see. I mean, I went out to Tinley because I mean, this year I told myself I'm traveling a bit more. Normally I just do the California shows. And that's it. I see a lot of the hype of the online shows, and I want to kind of travel around. So I want to get out a little bit more. So I made it out to Tinley. That's one that's always got a lot of hype.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go out there and see what that one's about. it was, and stoked that I did, because she announced shortly after I'd already booked my tickets and headed out there that she was going to have them. So it was
Were they that amazing in person?
The babies are absolutely. I would actually really like to see an adult in person to see how true to color they go, because knowing the shift that some do, I mean, natural variation is going to be a portion of that already. So there's going to be a shift in colors from intensities already and variations. The two babies that she had there alone had differences amongst themselves in color hues and color saturations and the way they looked. But yeah, they're highly impressive. I mean, I give her a hard time anytime I see them, and I've been giving her a hard time for years because she was also in California, and she knew April and kind of communicated through there, and with the local shows, we've kind of gotten to know each other and talk over the years and become pretty good friends. I give her a hard time and tell her she's always wanted a yellow anaconda. Those are beautiful yellow anacondas. It's about time she came on board. So.
I'm looking forward to white anacondas because she's got all the ingredients.
I don't know about that one. I don't think that's necessary, because I think turning a green white is not going to necessarily do it the greatest justice. I don't
know. I like snow boas, and because they still have pattern. Like I don't think I'd like a green if it was patternless and white. But if it still has the circle pattern down the back and it's just one shade of white on another shade of white, I don't know. I think that would kind of
either way, they will be. I will absolutely not deny it's going to be impressive. Once they come out, it's most likely going to be an impressive snake. I think, as someone that highly appreciates just the yellow anacondas, the green anacondas, and I also appreciate the morphs. I think the more we get into it, realistically, a lot of the people that truly appreciate them are going to come back and at all times just go back to, I've got this, I really like this, I really like it, but you can't beat this. You can't.
I didn't realize.
Just highly beautiful.
Well, I didn't realize that there were morphs in, and I found this out because I was looking at your morph market account, but I didn't realize there were morphs in yellows.
There have been for years. I know Ben Rennick was working on quite a few. He had quite a collection of them years ago. A lot of it kind of got stalled in a lot of the different morphs. They'd silently been worked on. The projects have been worked on. The granite's been around for years. Patternless has been around for
shit keeps breaking.
Oh, there we go. We're back.
I was just bitching about AT&T.
Look, it happens all the time on this podcast.
Every week. It's ridiculous.
I dropped out, or did you drop out?
No,
I'm pretty sure it was us. We pay a lot for internet just for it to mess up.
And they tell me nothing's wrong with it.
All right, where'd you okay. Where were you at?
The patternless.
So we were talking we're talking about
morphs.
The morphs and yellows.
Yeah. They've been around. The yellow patternless have been around for quite a few years, and years that Ben Rennick was working with it. There's Xanthic that's around. That's probably the rarest now to date. It's been produced. It's not been highly produced. It was produced years ago. I believe there should be some litters, or at least het litters, coming out this year potentially if breeders have success. The granite gene has been around for years, but it seems to be one that's kind of wasn't very highly produced, or it doesn't seem to have been around highly or very much. There are a few juvenile subadults that are floating around right now. Some people that have adults that have either bred them or not had pairs, or are going that route. It's a recessive.
On the patternless, though, it's misleading. It's patternless the same way like Hermes is patternless. Like there's still a pattern. It's just not the regular pattern.
It's a horribly named, unfortunately. Granite actually does pretty good on the naming. It kind of just takes the typical yellow anaconda, the wild caught yellow anaconda, has more of a circular oval pattern. If you think of a green anaconda, they've got pretty defined circles.
Yeah.
Round circles down their back as a pattern. A yellow anaconda typically has more of an oval pattern. Typically, it can also have an offset circular pattern, making it kind of in a V shape or some offset Z shapes down the back in those ovals. Occasionally, you can end up with Mickey Mouse patterns if you have selective breeding and kind of work on that, where those circles those ovals come together. The granite gene is said to be recessive. Um, I say that specifically because personally, from what I've seen, I don't know that I can 100% say that. I kind of feel that it's more of one that has a visual representation immediately, but don't know the intensity that's been put into it. So there's still a lot, because it's so young still and hasn't been around forever. A lot of people have accepted that it's a recessive. But we still need, once we start producing more, we'll actually have a definitive understanding of that. Because if you're familiar with carpet pythons, kind of like the caramel,
it's probably granite like that.
It shows something like that. So instantly, when you have you can have a hive representation that today it's a het, 100% het, but it's a visually 75% granite, 25% normal, or 50%, 50%. And it kind of is a visual split in the pattern of the snake itself. So that's accepted and known as recessive. So it's hets and visual hets, or visual granites. Patternless, as you said, is kind of a reduction. So it's a confusing one to post or see. And really, there's not many patternless that do a full, like a real heavy reduction. So where you have very many. There are some adults out that that actually have that reduction pretty well defined, but that doesn't mean they're always going to throw that heavy definition. So I think we need to still do some more as far as that goes in the patternless, because it's still fairly young to be focused on. I think that can be refined, or at least defined, to be more supportive of an actual patternless.
Well, what I saw when I was looking at the pictures, it's, again, it definitely should not be, just like with berms, it shouldn't be called patternless. It should be called reduced pattern, right? Because yellow anacondas tend to have a busier pattern than, say, a green anaconda. Green anacondas kind of have those dark circles on a green background, whereas yellow anacondas are much busier. But this almost makes it more like that from what I saw. You get some of these darker circles on the background and a lot of clear sides and everything else around it.
Yeah, it almost strips it down to more of a green anaconda look. But then what it does to the yellow color is it typically, the patternless gene specifically, tends to strip away some of the yellow and turn it more of an olive.
Yeah, that's what I noticed. It's more of a brown-green color to them.
Yeah, that's an olive. And then the granite gene tends to actually do the opposite, where it kind of intensifies the yellow. It seems that most granites, especially just pure granites, the adults that are out or that are around for breeder size, most granite visuals are a pretty high, intense yellow. So
one thing I always worry about, so we talk about on the show a lot with the large snakes, Reptikes, anacondas, berms. We see so many babies produced, especially in Reptikes. We see so many babies produced every year, and you see very few adults down the road, which makes you worry. Also, you just got to wonder, this one snake's laying 40 eggs, and are there really 40 people that need a retic? And it's got to be the same concern with you when you're doing anacondas. Maybe not so much yellows as greens, but I mean, it's still a sizable snake. My first question, though, is how many adult females do you have? Because that it's very hard, I would imagine, to go, I want to have all of these different yellow anacondas versus I want to have all of these different jungle carpet pythons that I can definitely fit in a room, no problem.
Absolutely. And that's something that we've struggled with, slowly growing. As I said, our original one was in 2006 is when we got it. I think our first time getting the opposite sex or an additional pair was 2008. So fully understand that. And yes, that's been something that I've struggled with, or that we've struggled with over the years, just juggling that idea, because thankfully we got into, our interest were in carpet pythons. We're heavily into carpet pythons and still are. And just like you said, I can have a collection of carpet pythons in a smaller space, in a larger quantity, than a collection of yellow anacondas necessarily. So one of the things that we've gone with, to answer the question directly, I've got currently 2 proven breeder females currently, and 1 female holdback that is likely, or she's definitely breeder ready. We've segregated them. So, and then this year specifically, because I produced 2 litters last year of yellow anacondas, and the way that I go about being very selective on how I sell them, and typically my process of vetting people definitely will irritate the people that are just coming in to get it because it's cool.
Well, I definitely want to get into the legalities of that in just a little bit, because I know that's in recent years has become a different thing for you as well, selling them.
Yes. No worries at all. But yes, so because keeping in mind that we can produce more carpet pythons, and we have produced more carpet python clutches, and seeing and going through initially getting introduced and trying to sell and go through that route, and seeing what sells, being prepared for holdbacks and things like that, translating that into yellow anacondas, we have consciously selectively segregated females and males yearly, unless we intentionally want them to breed. So like this year, we knew we weren't breeding, so the females have not been anywhere near a male since what was it, at least October, if not 2 months prior to that.
And how many babies did you get in your you had 2 litters this past year? How many babies was that?
We had, I want to say it was 30 babies between the 2 litters.
So that's not horrible.
Not horrible. Those are also pretty small litters. One of them was a first-time mother. One of them was a second-time mother, produced 2 years prior to that. And prior to that, we've only produced one litter a year every couple of years if we even produced. So we don't consistently produce, specifically because nobody needs, like you said, nobody needs hundreds of yellow anacondas. Consciously, California, at one point, since we got into yellow anacondas prior to the Lacey Act, at one point we were actually involved directly with that, where it was, hey, we're producing, and now we're coming into where you're going to be able to not sell or move these. So we had that conscious decision of, do we move things? Do we keep things there? And we kind of kept through there. But as when we got into the Lacey Act of impact and things there, we kind of just evaluated quantity that we had for adults with how many we really realistically needed to produce. So we let go of a pair of adults because we had so many. We had
that's what I was going to ask, if you're getting rid of adults, because it's got to be hard, because if you get a certain look in a baby, you can't always keep that baby and the adult it came from in 6 or 7 years, because you keep doing that, you're going to end up with a lot of adults.
But didn't you say?
Well, that's what. Go ahead.
Well, because earlier you were saying that they change how they look. Because I'll be honest, I don't know much about these types of snakes.
Well, no, when he's looking for a certain look, it's going to look that way.
Oh, so the look stays the same, just the coloration may change.
Some of the colors will shift. Well, I'm starting to find out some of the colors in some of the morphs, or some of the mutations there. Some of those, just like any other mutation, it starts out one color as a juvenile and it kind of develops a little bit more. Normal yellow anacondas, they tend to get a pretty good look. They're going to shift a little bit, but not heavily, to where normally you'd see the pattern and you kind of see what pops from there, and you can kind of pick those out.
Okay, I wasn't sure like how all that worked.
So I guess how is your future plans on what you're considering holdbacks in adults? Because right now you don't have a large number of females, and I imagine your goal is to not ever have a large number of females. But if you get a few good-looking females out of litters, I imagine you're going to try and hold those back at some point.
Yeah. In the last year, in total, we have 3, 4, 5 adults currently, and a total of 12 yellow anacondas in total that we're keeping. So in total, between holdbacks from 2021, actually litters going all the way back to, I think our first litter was 2011. So we've held at least one animal back from every litter. Female, males, we have lost a few over the years due to breeding complications, health issues, not really health issues, breeding complications. And then we've sold a couple. We sold a pair through that we didn't produce. But other than that, we've got most of our holdbacks. A lot of our holdbacks we've personally, because yellow anacondas are slower growers. When you slow grow it, when you're naturally someone that slow grows your collection, and you get something that's already a slow grower, it doesn't harm it unless you really cut back. But at the same time, you have the ability to really enjoy the animal if you give it the larger space and continue feeding it as you normally would. So you don't necessarily have to plow them with food to get them to get size. Yellow anacondas don't shoot up in length and size so quickly. So the first 3 years, it's definitely a reasonable and manageable animal. So with me, I like to hold stuff back for a year or so and kind of get an idea of just who's going to handle a little bit better. If there's so many that look the same and I know I just want a pair from this litter, I'm not going to focus necessarily on selling everybody. I'm going to take a handful out of that bunch, pull them aside, say, I'm going to focus on you guys. We're going to get rid of these guys. And then when we get to this point, I can narrow you guys down.
Yeah. So I do mostly sand boas and small stuff, and then BCI, or Colombian boas and different mutations. And when I got into reptiles over 20 years ago, I was like, oh, I really want to do boas. And then time went on, and 20 years later, me goes, all right, well, I've got sand boas. Those are great. But as far as boas go, I have to be extremely selective on adult females I'm going to keep, because, 18, 19-year-old me was like, yeah, I can have a whole wall full of cages. And then almost 40-year-old me goes, that's a lot of fucking food. So we're going to be very selective on how many 7-foot female boas, 8-foot female boas I have. And that's one thing that's hit me, is that, as some of these projects go on for me now, in 3, 4, 5 years, I'm going to have a baby that I raise up that's now 7 foot, and a female that is kind of obsolete as far as what I need for a breeding project. And I've never really had to sell an animal that I've taken care of long term. And so that's one thing I'm just thinking in like 4 or 5 years, man, I've had this female for 7, 8, 9 years, and now I don't really have the space for another adult boa.
Absolutely difficult. I'm struggling with that now. As I said, I have I have multiple adult females right now. I have 2 that are proven, and they're both from the same parents, same genetics. So they're sisters, and I have their brother, and I've produced their offspring multiple times and have their holdbacks. So it's one of those of, like you said, running into the wall space versus pet. So one of those has hit that chopping block personally. It's not easy, I can say that. What I can say that I'm doing, at least from my perspective at this moment, to ensure that it at least goes to a proper area, it's reasonable. I've got a reasonable number on it that it values that to me. And whether it moves or not, ultimately, it's been a pet for years. So one extra space doesn't need to be bred. But like you said, it's food. And again, that's where coming into this, I knew I'm getting into this. I actually am horrible with trying to sell stuff because I don't like doing it. I don't like the stress of shipping. I don't like the vetting people. I've heard so many horror stories. So I actually hold a lot of stuff back, and then end up over the years, as it gets older, run into people, family members, different friends that have family members that, hey, we're looking for this, or they come over and they're interested in something. You know what? You want this? If you're set up for it, come back in a couple weeks or so. Tell me your setup. Show me your setup. You can have this because you're going to have it as a pet. You enjoy it right now. And you know what? I'm holding on to it. It'd be nice to breed. It'd be nice to sell. But at the same time, just seeing you're happy with it, that's better to do and get rid of, because now at least I've got one more space to justify the next holdback I've got. And then I don't have to necessarily get to that point of, hey, I have to sell this. So now it's going to come down to, I need to move it it doesn't matter what the value is. I just need to move it. And I don't ever want to get at that point, because that does get tough, especially with large snakes and stuff. So selectively picking those out is definitely a rough one. So that's been one of the reasons when producing, I've only produced every couple years. This last season was the first one I actually ever produced, or I produced 2 litters together. Initially, I wasn't going to do that. I let a friend talk me into it. One of those moments of, hey, why not do it? And then B, it was one of those, the female was showing all the signs and really showing that she was interested.
Yeah.
So I wasn't going to fight that for that. Aside from that, selectively breeding on how much I'm going to do, and then making sure that I have to be responsible is really the only thing that I can do to selectively produce which one I'm going to let go of, which one I'm not. Thankfully, I've only run it. This is the first time in years that I'm running into the idea of justifying letting an adult go. And as I said, to justify that on my end, I've put a number that's pretty significant to ensure that it gets a reasonable home that's going to take care of it correctly, and it's not going to go. My work and everything that I've kind of put into it and the care that I've put into it doesn't just go to you're going to get thrown to every female you can do just to throw off what you can until you go out.
Well, so let's talk part of that, talk about legalities, because you got into anacondas late 2000s. The world has changed. The United States has changed a lot in large constrictors from then to now. And for anybody that's listening, you cannot. So in the early 2000s and before, you could get imported yellows and greens fairly commonly. You find them, but that is not a thing anymore. Well, legally, not a thing anymore, because we can no longer import large constrictors into the States legally. So how has that changed for you as far as how you sell and who you can sell to when it comes to something like a yellow anaconda?
It has made it tougher, but thankfully, and I can only say tougher because the vetting process is tough. I've run into people that are in states that they clearly know they can't, and I don't know at that time that they can't. So at first I'm relying on the people contacting me to understand their area.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I thoroughly review the background. If it's in any question, I mean, I'll reach out to USARC and ask them just to confirm or check with somebody. Hey, somebody double check, and I'll let the individuals know, hey, I apologize if everything's going as it should, and I need to delay things because I'm checking. I will, and I'll give them the heads up. As far as sales go, thankfully I started and there wasn't much available, or I wasn't really producing to sell. My first production was I had a male, I had a female. I knew A and B at healthy ages would produce. Again, they were pets that I truly just appreciated. So I was along for that ride, not on the, hey, I'm going to sell these. So my first litter, I basically I did wholesale. They were for nothing, unfortunately. But at the same time, it got me into doing that. I kept the babies I wanted and then wholesaled off the other. But at the same time, I wasn't in a situation where I was part of the community, part of knowing, hey, these are the people to sell to. These are how you sell. This is how you do this. That was really, go ahead.
One positive. That's got to be one positive, right? So what did a normal baby yellow sell for in 2009, 2010 versus what does a baby yellow sell for now?
Now they've definitely, Lasiac, that's been one of the huge positives for yellows on the Lasiacs. I think one of the things that really gave the spike on that end as far as positive, so to say, for price, I hate to say positive because when you put price with it, I can justify
positive because it weeds out people. Price weeds out.
Exactly. It's hugely positive in my eyes. As much as it isn't, it is, because really the value should have been way higher before. The advantage to it being as low as it was then is somebody like me was actually able to get into them. Had it been a higher price, I probably would never have entertained that. Never gotten into it. So that was a huge positive, is it has elevated the entry level just for a generic. The addition to recently the morph starting to, those projects are finally into adulthood. You're starting to see the offspring of those starting to come out. So they're actually, breeders are starting to share that. And we're starting to see more and more of that to start off. So I think as Reptikes and other large snakes, kind of people are looking for something a little smaller, that aspect catches that market or those individuals because they're interested in that. They're coming from that side of their industry. from our side of it with the anaconda keepers, they're looking at it as, hey, our projects we're finally getting progress on our projects. So it's nice to have other people interested in these projects. Because I know many other people that are working on the yellow anaconda projects that are finally at that point of, I'm producing patternless fun. I'm producing some people coming into exanthics that finally, after so many years of progress, they should be coming into them. So a lot
and they're holding their price too because of that, because we can't get cheap ones in now.
Yeah, you can't get them in because the Lacey Act feared a lot of states. You can't. Some people can't get them. When the Lacey Act did pass for that period of time in the beginning, most people ditched those projects. They ditched working with them. They ditched handling them. They ditched anything on them. Plus their reputation behind it being defensive, snappy, unpredictable. That turns a lot of people away just in general. So when you take that and then tell other people, you breed these, you can't take them across state lines, you're stuck in your state, this and that, it really cuts a lot of the interest off on that, which, again, for all right, there should be a lot of cautionary tales on these, but I also have the opposite side where I've used them in education. I mean, my first one that I ever got, the 2006 one, I still to this day use it to educate people, my kids, other kids, individuals that, hey, so they have a reputation, and how many I've got and how many I've worked with, they earn that reputation, but it's more of them trying to earn they require keeper respect, in my opinion. You have
they're not a ball python.
You earn their respect and understand and learn to kind of read them. They don't give you your typical snake warning where they're going to watch you and kind of zigzag and follow you face on. They will, but when you're holding them, if they don't like something you did, they're coming at you 90 degrees to the side, and they'll just tag in and keep going with their day. And that's what a lot of people don't like, is until you learn to really read their body, they can be somewhat unpredictable.
Well, see, I kind of wish, it's one thing I like about with not being able to import large constrictors. I don't think it really hit berms and retics the same way, because there's so many of them out there and you can get them still, certain ones not that expensive, and there's morphs and all that you can, but with greens and yellows, I did see the jump in price, and I liked that because, again, it weeded out a bunch of people. And I wish that would happen with things like Savannah monitors. Like, I wish Savannah monitors, we could not import them anymore. Force people to learn how to breed them, and force people to have to buy captive bred ones, because not everybody needs a $20 Savannah monitor imported from Africa that's going to die in a 20-gallon tank because they don't take care of it. So I just wish there were more things. I hate saying I want more laws, because that's not what I want. We don't tend to police ourselves that well in the hobby in certain things, and then everybody wants the cheapest thing. And so if you have a few people out there breeding something like a Savannah monitor and they want to sell it for $500, someone's going to go, why should I buy this for $500 when I can buy this half dead one on a table at an expo for $20? It's only $20. And so I liked that with the anacondas was that whole thing really got us away from people impulse buying a snake that gets 15 foot, 14 foot.
That's been one of my favorite parts, because before that, I think circling back to your question, I initially sold wholesale. I mean, wholesale to the local store at the time I did was, I think I got $50 to $75 a baby. And that was, I mean, it was my local shop, and I had to kind of work them to get even the 75. I think wholesale for any animal at that point was basically 50, that bottom line. And it did, and then they were retail, I think, in the store for $200, $150, $200.
That's an impulse buy. That's not expensive.
That was green anacondas were $199 flat. So yellow anacondas varied from $150 to $200 because of their rarity. At that time, at least in the local shop, and I think online you'd find the same range. Green anacondas at that time were $200 even. And they remained $199 for years. And I think they jumped up to $250. And then after the Lacey Act, and certain people started breeding, and some people started breeding and having more consistent success publicly with their greens, suddenly that price jumped significantly. We're talking $200 to $500 to $1,500 to $2,500.
Wow.
And when that did and those held, that was the impact that I saw, at least to bring everything else up. And then there was, as I said, because the lull caused from the Lacey Act, and a lot of the projects that we're working on were more for something else, that kind of drove up the price of yellows also, because there was such rarity. The ones that were the only ones at that time or the last couple of years really have been consistently producing and having online availability. I know there's certain breeders that were breeding, but then they'd have basically they're sold out when they produced them. Anybody that yearly could have something available or you could point someone to was a local shop.
Well, the other benefit was you get something like a price like that, and we see it in the hobby all the time. Once something becomes expensive, I won't say non-reptile people, but people that don't really appreciate the animal, but they appreciate the dollar sign, want to jump into those projects. And at least with yellows, look, that attitude does keep some of those people out of it, because they'll go, well, it's still not worth $2,000 or $1,000. You know, it's not worth them to get bit by an adult, and then having to deal with an animal that takes a while to grow up, and have to deal with an animal that doesn't breed as easy as a ball python or a boa constrictor. That helped also for y'all to keep it's a higher price tag. And when I say higher price tag to people, I don't say it's great because now yellow anaconda people can make money, but it allowed you to make sure yellow anaconda people were keeping yellow anacondas and breeding them because they liked them. And again, it put that price tag on there so someone doesn't go into a show and buy one off a table for nothing.
It kind of leveled the field, in my opinion, for the private breeder, the ones that are doing it for the actual interest of them.
Yeah.
Versus the local importer or show or pet shop. Because it gave us, so to say, the ability to hold our price for that. Because I know beforehand we were doing that, or there were others that were doing that, where it was, hey, this is the price. I know you can get it at a pet shop for cheaper, but what you're doing is you're not just getting that animal. You're going to come back to me and ask questions. You're going to come back and do this. You're going to need this. I'm asking for this because I put this into it, and I'm ensuring that you are prepared for it. Whereas I do it today. If I have somebody that says I'm overpriced for something, I am more than happy to give them a local pet shop number. I'll give them Triple L. I'll give them, if Triple L has anything, I'll research that first. Or instantly, I'll shoot them up to Jay Brewer's shop, whatever, Prehistoric Pets. Yeah. They've always got them. They've always got them cheaper than I do, and I have no problem sending them there. I've seen them at local shows.
But that is not the same place. Like people have to understand that is not the same as coming to you. Like someone,
and that's the thing, and that's what I tell people. I'm like, I'm not doing it to be mean. I'm not putting him down. It's a local shop. I've seen the animals. He's breeding them. He is actually producing what they are. I'm putting my work into them. And at the same time, if you come to me and you come through me or any of the other breeders that I'll point you to, because I'll point you to another yellow anaconda breeder if they have the same thing. No issue with that. For the community, do what you can. I have a day job also. This is a hobby for me. Anything that there goes right back into it for that purpose. So glad to point them in any direction. But what I tell people is that my price is what it is because you're getting me with that. If you own that, I own a snake since 2006. If I reach out to East Bay Vivarium, where I got it from, and I really push to talk to somebody of a concern, I'm going to at least expect to get to talk to somebody. With me, I don't expect you to push for it, but you're going to always be able to reach out to me. I've had people ask questions for breeding down the road. People ask questions for anything care-wise. So,
they're a time-consuming animal for several reasons. The get-rich-quick scheme of the reptile hobby really only works for a few select animals, and it only works for a short period of time. Like, yeah, you can get a ball python ready to breed in less than 2 years. It's not great, but people do it. But you're not doing that with a yellow anaconda or a green anaconda. It's just not happening, right? You're not getting it to breeding size. And then on top of that, when they're time-consuming to clean. Look, when they go to the bathroom, it's not the same as taking a paper towel and just picking up poop and throwing it away. Like there's some work into having to clean up after. I mean, even if they just poop in the water, it's still a giant thing of water full of a giant mess. And so that also weeds out people as well.
Yes. Unfortunately, I mean, looking at both sides of that, I absolutely don't fully agree with that because, yes, they definitely take maintenance. They definitely work. Coming from the other side for the people that are looking on the other end, just to play devil's advocate, it's hard to say that's not justifiable when you own Reptikes, Burmese pythons, because realistically, those are twice as twice as much of a mess, twice as large.
Oh yeah.
The issue really comes down to is, are they willing to put up with the attitude potential? Because if you do, I mean, from the get rich quick scheme, yes, this species is not for you, because the purpose is not for that. It takes a lot more longevity. They're definitely a more patient style animal, to where they basically require more of your attention if you want something that's going to kind of reward you back. You want that more Burmese python calm style snake, you have to put in the work. So turning around to get the get rich quick scheme, you're going to be throwing food at it. You're not going to have a pleasant animal to experience or handle, which is going to drive the desire for that person not to really follow through with that project.
Yeah.
Because the fastest you're going to be able to do it, you throw food at it like crazy. You have the best conditions. You provide all the best scenario. Your best case scenario, you'll get a breeding at 40 years. You're not going to get a large litter. You can have large litters the further down the road you go, but you're talking 40 years. And for most people that are in the get kick scheme, that investment is not paid off within 40 years. It's a 2 to 3 year return. Otherwise, it's a loss.
Yeah. So I want to jump into a few things from the chat. Timothy says, with your yellow tiny, which I pulled up on your website here, would you consider that pattern normal or reduced?
That one's a tricky one. Currently, it's a normal. There has been over the years, because I've had him for so long, and he's had such a blasted or pixelated back pattern. It's been said that there is a potential hypo mutation in yellow anacondas, and that potentially could be it. I don't think anything, or I've yet to find anything online or anything that supports actual factual support of a hypo. I've seen plenty of claims, but coming from carpet pythons, there's such natural variety amongst so many animals. Yeah. I have a hard time justifiably, unless I'm not going to claim it. It wasn't sold to me that way. It wasn't presented to me that way. That's not how it was given. Long-term hope, that would be awesome. But I think proving something out like that is going to be far past something I'm able to really say. So I would say it's a normal. It's a natural variation of the pattern with more pixelated. So I do have some babies that I've produced that have variation like that. They're still babies, so I haven't held any of those ones up to see if that contains or intensifies over age. But
when you see that in boas too, there's some boas that have very busy patterns and some that have much cleaner backgrounds. And looking at the picture of this one, you can definitely see those black ovals on a lot of them. He's got a lot of yellow in the middle of the black ovals versus some of the other ones which have a solid black.
And the yellow in the pattern tends to be a little bit more intense of a yellow than in the natural overall pattern. So I see where the claim of the hypo comes in. I've definitely seen some pictures where some people have had versions similar to that, where they've claimed it hypo, and I can say, okay, I could see that, but where's the parents? Where's the background on this? I can't just naturally go through and claim XYZ based on appearance, especially since he unfortunately, because I got him so long ago, he was sexed multiple times as a female. I fed him as a female, being my first large snake. I fed him as large snake female. It was also my early college years. So I had friends that came over. You have a large snake. Hey, you want to see him eat? Had a tag you also. I had a board that just said, hey, you hit a certain number of rodents, I'll buy a case of beer. So they would come over and we'd feed things. So he, after being sexed for the first 3 years as a female, finally, when I had a breeder ready female and he was locked up, I took photos and brought him back and said, hey, I don't think it's a male. But he's not a great producer because I assume it's because I've kind of gotten him larger. My younger male breeder is probably half his size.
Oh yeah.
So I have specifically segregated him, produced with him, and the litter that produced. I don't know if it was because the holdback female was young or anything, what the deal was there, but it did. Anything he's bred clearly with has produced low quantities. So I think size on that end might have something to do with it.
Well, and I've always told people, especially with like boas, size is important for males. I've had big males who just don't have a sex drive. They don't do
do it with
anything.
sand boas too.
Well, sand boas are naturally sexually dimorphic, and so are anacondas to a point. But you can get them a male big. And same with boas. I keep my boas. My adult boas are 4 foot. They're eating medium rats like every 3 weeks. Like they're not a big snake. And if you look at them, you go, oh, this snake must be like 2. And I'm like, no, this snake is like 5. It's just there's no reason for him to be 6 foot and weigh 20 something pounds because that's just not what he's gonna. That's not the best, especially if you want to breed them. And so again, same thing here. I mean, you're dealing with boas. Also, I mean, it's a boa, so.
Yeah, I'm finding that everything is, you can power feed them just like we used to. And I mean, the hobby used to, no fault on anybody of their own. But I think like a lot of species, and again, it's the hobby in general, we've gotten into that. Here's what the max size is. That's what we got to aim for. I think
everybody goes for that.
Come down to, you know what, realistically, throttle back, take 2 to 3 feet off of that, and that's probably more healthy.
I saw a video of today actually on Facebook of a massive BCI in the wild. And I mean, it was huge. It was probably, I say huge compared to anaconda, but probably 9 pushing 10 foot. But when you look at a 9 or 10 foot boa in the wild, it is not shaped the same way as a 9 or 10 foot boa in captivity. Like this thing is shaped like a loaf of bread. It looks muscular. There is no rolls on it. It is not round at any point. Whereas I remember the king snake days, looking on king snake, people always post their biggest boas, and there's these giant Colombian boas with fat rolls. I mean, they're round snakes.
Those were the photos that got me away from, because I'm like, you know what, yellow anacondas don't look that big. And you know what, I've seen Colombian boas that are bigger than yellow anacondas. And I'm like, and you guys are angry about that thing's got a bigger head than what mine's going to get. Mine's going to hit and it's going to go away. That thing's going to bite you and it's going to hold. So, those exact photos are another thing that aided in, hey, I don't want that. I'm going to look this direction, because in that time was education stuff, very brief education stuff on yellow anacondas, but there was no news on them. They're invasive. They're going to cause problems. It was, hey, they're known to be snappy.
It's going to bite you.
Here's a beautiful photo of a baby that's neon yellow and black.
One other question we had in the chat, our buddy Darren asked, has there been a noticeable difference in the defensiveness from your originals to the F1 or F2 generations of these snakes? Have you seen them calm down? You know, because like Reptikes in the 90s and 80s had the same horrible stories, and then now you see Reptikes with little kids playing with them.
Unfortunately, I haven't focused enough on consistent reproduction. I did produce my own litters, holdbacks, and then produce with those, and then holdbacks. But I did one at a time on those, so it was a very small sampling, and they weren't handled as effectively. The most recent litters that I produced, those parents they might as well have been wild. They weren't. They were captive bred completely, but the parents themselves have always just wanted to eat me and kind of just kiss from when I got them. Now they're older, they tolerate, they're really good, but I'm not going to use them in an educational situation. The babies they've produced are all start out the same way. What I'm actually finding is the most beneficial in the last couple litters that I produced is cohabitation.
Really?
I go off of that because I cohabitate the holdbacks that I'm going to keep once I know they're established, but I cohabitate them in a really large basically tub in comparison to what they would live in. And then the individuals that I'm going to make available or I'm going to let go, those are individually packed, individually set up, and in their own appropriate size enclosures. Every single one of those wants to eat the moment you open or try to do something with them. They're just as loving as a typical anaconda attitude you would read about. The individuals that I cohabitate when I hold back, they snap occasionally, but right now I can reach in there and have basically pick up a handful of 3 or 4 of them. 3 of them, there's 3 now. Pick up the 3 of them and cycle through. They will be a little defensive at first going in there and startling them, which any snake keeper, you should understand, if the thing's settled in its home and you go in there and just grab it, you may get a little bit of a startle bite, especially from a juvenile. But overall, they definitely tolerate handling a lot better.
One, I think a lot of that is going to take, look, retics have been bred on a large scale for a while, and the really mean ones kind of got weeded out. People like, I don't want to keep this. They didn't breed that. The yellow anacondas are kind of in the infancy of doing all this, and it would really take breeding and then finding probably the calmest baby and keeping that back and breeding that later and trying to find and it's just going to take a while. There's not, I don't think, enough yellow anaconda breeders to work to that point yet.
I was going to say, I think it's more on the work that the keepers end up putting into it. So if I'm breeding, and honestly, if I held stuff back and did like some of those monitor keepers or other people do with their socialization on a regular basis with babies, probably get to that point. I don't think it's necessary. I think with the stuff that I've got, it's still young enough that it could do that. You can get there, but I also think a lot of it's going to be more on the keepers, because we have to break. I mean, first off, you have to break that. The first thing you think is they're snappy, they have bad attitude, but you think of a green anaconda and you're thinking it's great. But the problem with that is the green anaconda is twice its size. Realistically, the community can 90% of the community that takes care of retics, berms, realistically, a large percentage of the community could take care of something like this. The green anaconda is not going to fit in that large 90% or that percentage. As a responsible reality. So if you get past the size, you have to get past the stigma of attitude. You just put the work into that. I mean, there's a lot of species that have that stigma of being defensive and problematic, but with the work, there are plenty of keepers that break that. And it's, hey, one or two breeders, it doesn't necessarily have to be multiple generations. Those breeders put the work into their babies or their offspring, and they get that passes on to the buyers. And now that passion and that appreciation goes there.
Okay, so we have talked yellow anacondas for a while, but now I want to get to the snake that I really want to talk about.
Bumpy water puppet.
Oh my Lord.
I want to get
so I have questions about the elephant trunk snake. Actually.
about the flaccid penis snake?
I'm not going to call it that. But I have I know nothing about the snake except for what he refers to it as. So they live in the water all the time?
Yes. They have the potential to come out of water. But in my experience, that's not good. If they're looking to get out of water, it's not good.
Something's wrong with your water.
or not even with the water necessarily, maybe with the animal, or maybe they're crossing land to look for a different area, I can assume, in the wild. But in my experience, it's not good to give them when given land. If they're on land or seeking land, it's not good. But yes, they can remain in the water, come up for air.
Do they breed in the water?
To my knowledge, yes. That remains. I don't know that that's been necessarily. It's said to have been done. There's a lot. I've run in personally a lot of people that have said they've done it years ago. Don't have anything to back it. Their stories don't necessarily work in line with the stuff that I'm running into. Don't dismiss it, but it's.
I didn't know if that was like another reason they would come out of the water.
I don't know. I will eventually try to experiment with that. It's been one of my things with getting into these is I truly push I like to push the envelope as nail biting as it is. I like to push it just because
somebody's got to.
I want to understand what's going on. The book says this. What happens if we do this? What happens here? To within reason, obviously. I'm not going to say, hey, it's a water snake. Let me put it in the desert.
Right. I get that.
So let's talk anatomically these snakes. So in the water, they look like a regular-ish snake. I mean, but out of the water, their body's not made to be on. They may cross land, but how weird do they feel out of the water?
Out of the water, they feel, their skin feels, have you ever handled or touched
I've held a baby and it's very loose. Oh no, yeah.
That's exactly what they look like and they feel like.
It's just so
the skin is exactly like a metal shop file, and if you zoom in on it and get 10 shots, it's almost hooked back similar to a metal shop file. So it's similar to what they feel if you see them. As far as out of the water, they have the appearance of looking horribly flat, skin baggy, and all of that.
Yeah.
I am starting to see
Unpleasant.
that potentially could be, if you have a thin snake that isn't fed properly, it also looks very thin out of its
Gotcha.
enclosure. I
Oh.
think personally, and all the stuff that I've been doing over the years with these and work with these, the biggest two keys that I've run into that I feel we've unfortunately fallen short on have been feeding and just stability of water temperature focus. I think we've been focused on things that are band-aids and medicines in a situation where we know there's already problems, but we haven't necessarily addressed the stemming factors. So that's
I'm just looking at a picture on your Facebook of all three of them, like looking up at the camera.
Oh yeah, the
And
male
they
is
just look-
it's the smallest of them all. The females are both pretty large.
They look like penises. They can't help. I mean,
It's tough to I guess to argue against people on some of those. I've heard all kinds of names for them. My favorite, honestly, is the wet sock puppet.
that's funny because I want Arabian sand boas. Like only one person has them, and no one really breeds them. But those are the ones that most people think of when they think of a sand boa, because they look like a sock puppet with the eyes on top of their head, googly eyes.
Yeah.
So it's that same goofy look where I'm like, it's a goofy ass snake, and I want it because it's a goofy ass snake. So what do your guys eat? What do you feed them?
Tilapia. As best as I can, I feed tilapia. I try to source tilapia as best and often as I can. If I have to, or for those that are looking to get into them that are in more of an area where you can't necessarily access tilapia, cichlids, mollies, platies, most of your smaller stuff, the appropriate size fish. Just like snakes, your terrestrial snakes, they can eat larger prey. With fish, that's tough, especially as a feeder. I can tell you that, because when you go to Petco and look at those cichlids, they're depending on your area, what, $10 to $15?
Or if you go to a private pet store, 40.
If you go to if you get the fancy, really fancy good, if you get a large size that's appropriate feeding size for an adult elephant trunk, you may run into, like you said, $50. So the best recommendation, thankfully for most people, they're not running into adults that come in. So when you get one and your access to it and you're looking to get started, you're going to look for, you can use minnows and things like that. You want to use them in mixtures. So don't just focus on minnows that you'd find in a feeder section of a store. You want to try and get away from those, because if you think of minnows, most of the time they're really small.
Yeah.
You're going to end up, that snake's going to eat dozens upon dozens to even gain any kind of nutritional value from that. And then the effort that they're going to put into it is going to just kind of contradict everything they do.
So I have a question about
I have
a question about the minnows. So when I feed crickets and roaches and superworms and things like that, like I gut load them before I feed them to my lizards. Obviously, there hasn't been a whole lot of research, to my knowledge, about feeder mice and rodents being fed healthier diets.
People are doing it,
but people are starting to do it. So it's becoming a thing. Is it one of those things like we get the fish and we just immediately feed out the fish, or like with minnows, or do you feed them specific things and then feed them out? Or
if you have the space and setup, that's the best recommendation. Preference.
Make sure they get what
I
they
do
need.
not do that.
Yeah.
I will admit 100%. I get my order of fish and I dump them in I float them, pour the water off the side, net them, move them over. Do that for inside, outside, any enclosure that I've got. Now, in the beginning, when I had smaller numbers and first getting started and exploring through this, I did try to do that. I'm going to buy them, set them up in this tank, feed them out for 2 weeks, and then I'm going to catch them and transfer them over. Problem with that is the catch and transfer over. And an adventure. If you thaw rodents out, that's easy. Pull them, set them, walk away. Catching fish to transfer over, especially
Yeah.
when you're like the smaller the fish, the more difficult it is. And when you're talking stocking schools of fish, quantities of 100 plus is it's easy to throw the net in there the first couple times, but after a while, you're just like, okay, I'm chasing you, tearing the whole thing apart.
So it seems like one of the species where the Asian market is probably your best shot.
Yes. If you get adults, the Asian fish market's what you're looking for. The struggle that you're going to run into there is for adults, a feeder fish is not quite the size that a human adult is going to eat. So you're going to struggle with getting the smallest fish at the Asian fish market to get it to eat. And then at the same time, you have to buy a school of them. So if you stock one feeder, you can't do this like a normal snake where you put one fish in there. You can, but it's going to take a long time for that animal to find that. The fish do develop a sense of understanding. They realize this is a predator, and they will adapt and understand, I stay this far away from that animal and I don't get eaten. If I go over here, I'm going to get eaten. So the best thing has been stocking in large schools of fish. If you think when you're fishing, if you're trying to fish with a net in a large school of fish versus catching one, it's way easier to catch in a school.
That makes
these
sense.
animals do the same exact thing. And what's interesting that I've found with them, if you stock a school of fish, they acknowledge that there's a lot of activity. And within a couple hours of that activity, they'll be out hunting. And they'll do that multiple times daily until that school of fish is depleted or they have no ability to catch what is left. And then they start to dwindle their activity down and just say, hey, look, they'll go down to, hey, I'll do 4 laps through the day to get fishing. Well, now nothing's available. I'm going to go do 2 laps. Well, there's nothing really available. I'm only going to come out once a day, do a lap and see if there's any food, and then I'm going to bed.
So how often are you feeding them?
I try to stock schools of fish so that I've got, depending on the setup, at least 10 left in there, but I probably buy fish in quantities of 150 to 200, depending on size, at least once a month, every 6 weeks.
So is there not a fear of overfeeding them right now?
I do have that fear, but just like most, I do, but I don't. So the fear's there as a keeper that understands that understands snakes can easily be overfed, and understanding and seeing that they do actively understand there's a school of fish with a lot of food versus no food in the tank. So understanding that, I have that fear, but the positive, I guess, in the fact that I feed fish, and especially for the adults, fish are seasonal. At Petco is not seasonal. They're there all year round, but you can only get so many, and their prices only discount such. So I established, thankfully, a source where I have a local fishery within an hour of me that either I can go pick up, call ahead of time, or arrange for them to deliver. So with them having that and working through what I need from them, that has made stocking a lot easier. But they have a period of time where they basically go into what would be considered winter. Well, it is winter, where they don't stock tilapia, and they won't go get tilapia because the fishery is they'll stock and they go get supplies for Southern California's lakes for people to go fishing. So this is food supply fish for the wild anyway. So they're basically what I'm feeding is as much risk as we are, so to say. Minus it hasn't made it out to the actual lakes or something like that yet. It's just gone from the breeding facility to the fishery to us.
So looking at them, I see you've got a couple setups. You've got some that are in look like a large glass tank. But then you have this, what is really cool, this big large tub setup.
Yes.
And I really like that. But also I'm noticing a variation in the color. Is that just variation in the population, or is there an actual mutation in the species?
There are multiple mutations, unfortunately, but fortunately, we do have a male and female, what are called calico, and then we have an array of what would be considered wild type. Now, complete honesty, the calico portion was just we're interested in these. This is what's available at an adult. This is what's available with the male we got. He's a calico. We looked for 2 years and nobody for 2 years had brought a male adult in. And this was the only one that came in for 2 years, was available. And we were focused on, we need a male. We had 2 female adults at that time. Our other juvenile was a female. We had another female juvenile and a juvenile male. So we're off on a male adult, and at the time frame that said that they take to breed, we needed to find one. So we accepted that he was the only one that came in. He's been the only one that we know of that has come in since still. As an adult male, most times females are brought in. So we got him, but they're calicos. There's albinos, I do believe. I want to say there's 2 types of albinos, the positive and the negatives.
Yeah.
Mike Clarkson has a few of the albinos. I don't know if anyone else is currently working with adults.
So where are they naturally from?
These ones are from Indo. I think I saw earlier that there are some in Australia, some species in Australia. They actually are said to get larger.
Oh wow!
But these are what we have are the Indonesian style, the Indonesian ones. So recently, Dan Leary posted a photo of one.
Yeah,
pretty massive. I mean, that was absolutely impressive. And now that's got me wanting to pull mine out. And I'm trying to get.
And that one has no loose. There's no loose skin in that picture.
No, and that's the thing. It's like he's saying, like he's showing, is that's a healthy large animal. I'd be curious to know if it was gravid, at how thick in the back end it was. Overall size, I want to say initially I was thinking it's close to one of our largest ones, but looking now closer at my larger one, I'm like, yeah, that may even be double the size.
That is a big. I didn't realize they got that big, and then I saw that picture.
So how many do you
I've heard
have?
and read that they get like 8 feet, but I don't know. And I'm hoping to get an idea. And I want to, next time I see Dan in California, I'm going to pick his brain about it. And he knows that every time I see him out here, it shows. I pick his brain about it. But I'm excited to see that going. But they can be pretty significant. I don't think mine are that big. I think I might be close. But they're said to be about 8 feet. My experience, males are probably pushing the 5 foot size, 4.5, 5 foot size for healthy.
So they're a much bigger snake than I thought they were.
They're good size and thickness. So they're girthy. They're not as long, but they're girthy. I mean, they're bicep girth and stuff like that. You're looking.
It's okay. You were asking.
How many of these do you have?
Currently, we have 6 of them. And seeing that one from Dan, yeah.
You have other large snakes. I need
a bigger spot. Yeah.
But they're gonna need more space.
Well, yeah, because this is a purely aquatic snake, whereas yellows will live purely in the water, but these things are only in the water.
So these are like a fish tank setup.
I've got a fish tank inside. I've got a spare fish tank set up that's roughly, it's a smaller length footprint, but it's a wider footprint than the one inside. So I've got 2 of those, and then I have like he was saying, the one that he liked, custom built pond.
I think that's what he's scrolling through to show.
Yeah,
this was not.
So that's custom built pond that we took. We got an old school Vision tub before they started, or a Waterland tub before they started putting the kind of risers and stuff. It's just one really large empty plastic tub that we got from I want to say it was a turtle breeder up in LA area. Built a frame, insulated that, and kind of set that up as a pond. So and a lot of people, when we see these things come in, and I've had this conversation with Dan, this is kind of like the yellow anacondas. They come in at a very reasonable price range. They come in very cute, adorable. Well, the yellow anacondas aren't necessarily adorable, but to some.
Sure, they are to somebody.
They're adorable, but they don't. But when they strike, people are like, "Yeah, that's not so adorable." But these come in looking really nice. You see them at a size that you could put them in a fish tank that's 3 feet or so. But I like to show the pond because that's the reality of what I think an adult truly requires. And most people aren't ready to put a pond in their house or in their yard.
Right. And you said they all live together or no?
The big,
the big ones.
I've got my juveniles together and my adults together. They do.
I'm trying to wrap my head around all this.
I preface that because I think the three adults together at the size they are right now, when they're fully fed
mature
and highly active and fully mature, that I should probably have a pair in there and not necessarily three. Hence one of the reasons why I have a spare tank set up just in case anything goes wrong. I don't necessarily see any aggression, any problems there, but elephant trunk snakes are known, or aquatic snakes are most commonly referred to as having a white spot, and that's their big killer, so to say. But I noticed that with stress that tends to show. So when you have multiple adults in there, depending on the time, if somebody's in shed, if somebody's eating heavily, or somebody's highly in a feeding mode, you may get a little bit added stress. But that's the same cautionary tale that comes with anything that's cohabitated, to be honest.
Well, and looking at your setups, a lot of people would look at this and go, well, a 75-gallon tank would be fine because it could stretch out across it, because we have that mentality of a boa goes in a 4 foot by 2 foot by 2 foot or whatever, and it can stretch out across it and you're fine. But it's really that floor print you have of this large tub, or something like, if anybody ever goes like Tractor Supply, the big blue tubs, the big water trough type tubs, you really need that the footprint for them to be able to move around. And then you're talking about putting several fish in there, which I guess we can get to talking about filtration, because now you're dealing with an animal that's in the water. Filtration is the number one thing, even if we're not talking about something like a fish that is breathing in that water. But anybody that's ever owned turtles, you have to understand that whatever size tank you have, get like 5 times size the filtration for it to handle turtle poop. Right. And so you're not only this is not only a snake cage, this is also a fish tank.
Yes. It's basically a full fish tank, with the idea that you're not filling it and setting it up as a complete fish tank, so it's not filled all the way. It's a fish tank that you need in an island view or some kind of view on the top, so they can come up for air. You can fill it larger, deeper, and all of that. Glass fish tanks, especially if you're only getting one, I don't want people to think, oh, you can't do that, you don't need that, especially for the first, at how slow these things tend to grow.
But at 8 foot, I'm not sure.
A 6 foot glass fish tank, you could get away with for years. I actually had a single adult in there for a while, young adult in there for a while. Not ideal for heavy feeding. Not ideal.
So these big females,
huge long. I wouldn't say you're looking at a 20-year-old snake in that. Definitely want something with more footprint. The positive or the advantage to the glass tanks, I do have to say, in comparison to what I've got, for getting established in feeding, verifying the animals are feeding, especially when they start to get more size, because the width of the tank becomes something that the animal can use to strategically fish. These snakes, because they hunt fish aren't just randomly showing up dead right there for me to grab. So they actively have to hunt for their fish. And
that weird ass tongue helps them.
They go from many different, one animal or various animals will use multiple techniques depending on what's available, where they're at, how they're set up. They'll use their tail to caught a lure and kind of pull something in and then go around for it. They'll wait patiently for them. They'll actively basically create a net and come around just using their whole body to kind of filter everything or push everything to one side and then wrap around it. So they will and then they'll actively track down and hunt or attempt to hunt fish too. So that's been something that's been interesting.
That's kind of cool to watch.
Yeah, and then just to see them throughout one night go through those various maneuvers, be posted up at one point, wagging their tail, waiting to bring it over, or later see them just basically flailing their whole body across, scaring all the fish to one corner. And then next thing you know, they're making basically a big C out of their body and wrapping their tail to push everybody in their mouth and grab what they can. So
I have to admit, listening to you talk about how active they are when they're hunting and catching the fish to eat, and then talking about overfeeding and, something that with our land snakes, for lack of a better term, that is something that you have to be careful with, that you're not feeding them too much. But it almost sounds like they're so much more active physically, because they're swimming in the water and because they're moving in the water and because they're doing all of this constantly, it almost seems like you need to constantly have all that food in there for them.
I agree. And that's why I said in the beginning, I kind of worry, but not realistically.
Right. Yeah. It's like they have a higher metabolism.
Higher metabolism because they're so active. And then the other thing that a lot of people have to consider heavily is fish is mostly water.
Yeah.
So its breakdown is very quick.
And that protein passes through pretty quick. There's no fat like in rats and stuff.
There's a little bit of fat, and that's really what they're getting mainly is the protein and the fat, the calcium and stuff from the bones, the fats from the fish, and then what they can. So you can imagine.
Yeah, those fish fats are different than rat fats. Like it's not, you get those rats with that fat just sits around for a while.
And scale it down to the different types of fish and think of the structures of the bodies. And then just imagine you've got a small baby, but you're feeding only those minnows. There's no body to that. You can feed hundreds, but there's not really anything to give them growth. You bump that up into a cichlid where you've got size, you've got structure. It looks too big, but now it's going to go through. Unfortunately, you have to go 20, 30 cichlids, which is not. It's a beautiful tank.
Cheap at all.
It's an absolutely gorgeous tank, but when you're watching it on camera at night, it hurts.
Oh,
it's a painful.
I know how much money he spends on his fish, so I can only imagine that maybe you get.
Yeah, and I'm not buying them for food.
Yeah,
like
so, you can get those types of fish for less because you're getting them through a market, though, right?
But not sick. I mean, cichlids.
It's cichlids. I mean, cichlids. If I have to crack down and break down to get those, I'm not getting the best discount. So that's a painful one. It always is. Especially with little kids because they like that pink one, the yellow one, the orange one, the spotted one. Those,
but it's gonna get eaten, so it doesn't matter what it looks like.
Always are the first to go. I like the purple one. Don't let it get eaten.
It tastes the best.
Gotta be the first one that goes. Sorry,
but it's the grape flavored one.
And that right there is exactly why I preference, and I tell a lot of people, I'm like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. I don't think this is definitely not for everybody. It's not something everybody should have. It's not something everybody's going to have. They definitely shouldn't be heavily imported because they're not.
That does worry me when I see them on a cheap table at a show.
Ready for them. But I think for the people that are interested and able, having the knowledge to go, hey, I need to source feeders, just like we do getting into reptiles. We source our feeders. So why would you get into another reptile and think I'm just going to buy a one-off? The responsible side is you got to do the research side of it. So we need the sporadic buys. That's how I got into it. But at the same time, we need that full backup behind it that says, hey, it's got to be where you get the sources. Who's going to find the sources? How do you find them? And that's why I let a lot of people know if you're getting into them, first thing you do is see where you can find a consistent source of tilapia. Thankfully, you can buy them on eBay, as strange as that is. eBay, online, you can buy a lot of these. Now, where we're going to struggle or where a lot of people are going to struggle if they start to go down this road and they have success with these and they get years into it, when you have an adult. Thankfully, we are lucky here. Where we're at, we have a fishery, again, an hour and a half away that supplies the local lakes. So we have a period of time where they don't stock tilapia or even try to get it. But because we've worked with them over the years, they've got our phone on, they've got our number on dial. So if they're going out there and they see it, they'll give us a call and say, hey, we can have this. What do you need? This is what we're looking at. Sometimes we can negotiate our price with them. Sometimes we get it. Sometimes they're a little better. We do the give and take, but at the same time, we're not paying. If you can find a source like that and you're buying, like I said, we're buying 150, 200, depending on size.
Yeah. And
having them delivered, we pay the delivery, all of that. We've been able to source them down to $1 to $2 a piece.
It's not bad.
When you break it down to and that helps justify on our end to have multiple. I got to buy 300 of these fish to get a reasonable price. Well, one's not going to eat 300, and I don't know that I need 4 tanks to keep these fish alive. Let's just get multiple.
And I know there's a lot of
education on that, but
in the South we have lots of pond stocking companies, and those are the ones if you look at, you can find bluegill, like decent sized bluegill that you could get and stuff like that. And so you just got, if you're doing something like this, look into those pond stocking companies, and if it's a company that see where they get their food, their fish from, not food, but their fish.
Yeah, exactly. If you can find one of those or a local fishery, another thing we point a lot of people to, if you can find, because indoor farming and hydroponics is a huge thing in a lot of areas. And for hydroponic farming, they use tilapia to help clean the water. Tilapia are dirty fish. They dirty the water, which feeds the plants. So, and then the plants, and it's a circle of life there. So if you can find a hydroponic farm or somewhere like that, you can also get some fish there. The trick is going to be transport. You're not guaranteed live. I've burned myself. Where I'm at, we have a lot of hydroponic farms, and I've burned myself with a lot of those places, just picking them up, having them fish them out, throw them in the truck, driving them over, bringing them in, and the next day, unfortunately, I lost the majority of them. So that's one of the big headaches that you go through on that.
So go back to setup on these guys.
Yes.
Do they need any sort of heated basking area, or are you just doing heated water at 80 or whatever? How are you heating these? Like, I mean, because again, they're reptiles, but they're a fully aquatic one, so it's kind of weird. People are used to setting a basking spot for most of their animals. Yes.
In the beginning, I read that they need a basking area. I never set up a fully aquatic land area. I did put forward floating cork stuff, shallow areas. And as I said, I noticed that anything that was seeking shallow or low water or no water, really it wasn't a heating thing. It was more just a health issue. The shallow water, less, if you think of aquatics, the further down you go, the more pressure you have on your body. So the idea that I had is the further down, the deeper they are, the more pressure is on their lungs. It's easier to breathe when you're up out of the water. On land, there's almost no pressure on their body other than their natural body. And if they're in a healthy condition, it's not going to work so well.
For anybody that's watching, I'm sharing a picture of this is the larger tub.
No worries. Yeah, this is the pond. As far as heating, we don't do basking. It's heated water. Try and maintain everything on a thermostat with either aquatic heaters or inline heaters. This pond specifically, because it's custom built, I wrapped the outer edges of the pond and the base with heat tape on the left and right side to help maintain the inner, and then insulated it. And then it's also got added heat via typical fish tank heater.
What kind of filter are you running on there?
That is a top-mounted filter that's roughly 3 feet by, I want to say it's close to 2 feet wide by 2 feet deep. That's a top-mount sump.
Gotcha.
So it goes through filter media. It's got a pump in one end that's pumping everything up through the filter media. It goes through a 3-stage filter media, and then gravity feeds back into the pond. On one end of that pond, you'll see the pipe that's across. That's basically set up. That's the filter return, and that's set up to create kind of a stream, simulate a stream flow from one end to the other. The filter pump is on the other side, and then there's also mounted wave makers that are set to simulate waves from the ocean, so that it simulates one end is a stream flowing down into the ocean, the other end is the ocean waves kind of crashing against the shore or against that meeting.
Gotcha. It's an awesome setup for those guys, and it's cool to see that. There's a few fully aquatic snake species that you see here in the hobby here and there, and for us in the U.S., we tend to think of our water snakes, which they just smell horrible. And I like a lot of our water snakes, but I'm never keeping one. Talk about a snake that wants to bite you. I'm just not doing it. But you don't see them as much anymore. But tentacle snakes were another one that's a fully aquatic setup thing that you don't see as much, but you could really go all out on a setup like this for tentacle snakes as well.
Yeah, you can get away with a smaller setup, but
yes,
really nice one with tentacle snakes.
So it's cool to see somebody working with it, not just owning one, which is great. If someone wants to own one, that's great. But it's good to see that you are trying to figure this out long term as well, and that you're getting a whole group of them together to try and breed and do all that. And that's neat to see with some of these species that are really, and I say it a lot. We've had some other people that on that had like house snakes and people that do file snakes. These snakes that you tend to see on wholesaler tables that come in sickly and they're just not going to make it after a week after the show. But if someone could actually get those and set them up in the hobby, they'd be such a cool snake to see in the hobby. And this is one of those. I think that would be such a cool snake to see in the hobby, constantly, reproduce on a regular basis.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of how we got into it. We had a buddy that got one himself, and his interest in it, as he was telling us about it, intrigued mine. And then he's reading we were reading the care sheets. He's setting everything up that way. Didn't have any success. We were bouncing all the ideas off each other. And then finally he's at the end of it. He said, here, if you think you can do something, try it. I ended up taking it in. Unfortunately, it didn't ever bounce back on my end. And then that kind of intro to failure is what really pushed it. And then seeing I got into mine from that. Hey, I read all the different, between the two of us, we read everything that was available to Google or any search online, just to the general public on care. We followed it to the T, tried every recommendation, every method. Went to a show, found another ones, got into those, and just went, hey, I'm going to do the same thing. Nah, it's not working. Now let's just stand back and see what's going on. Watch the animals and see, okay, based on my setup, I'm doing what they're saying. What's going on based on my general knowledge of these animals? Because everything I'm finding doesn't match. I'm finding people that say they have them, that they do this, and they're following this procedure still, and it's working. It's not working for my area. So I want something and then seeing that they come in, as I got more interested in them, it was seeing babies come in. When you get interested in something like that in the beginning, you see everyone that comes in. You're like, hey, there's one here, there's one here, there's one here. These people are bringing them in. Other friends are tagging you to say, hey, there's people bringing them in. So seeing how many were coming in and knowing we were trying everything between a couple of us to do everything, finding no success, that kind of just fueled okay, what's going on with this? Somebody needs to understand this, kind of share the information for the hobby and for people to give the reality, shed the light on. If you're interested in these, it's not an easy way to go. Everything online is available, and most of these, especially shops that are selling them,
but it will be super rewarding in the end.
Oh, absolutely. I look forward to it eventually. It'd be nice to go. I mean, I've had them for years, and in comparison to the longevity and the shared documentation, at least socially and things like that, and general knowledge shared on them, I feel like I've done a lot, or we feel like we've done a lot, but we don't consider it success yet. We still have a lot of obstacles we want to overcome. I want to get more juveniles, bring them in, get them successfully established, prove that whatever I feel is the setup criteria that I have is repetitive. I don't want to just say, hey, I have 2, I got through that and it was good. I want to go through, hey, I got imports after this year. I got imports from so-and-so. I got imports from here, this from here, so that we had it more of a sound justification before saying this is a care sheet. This is how you do it. Because for now, we preference, this is what works for us. We're in Southern California. Not everybody's got those conditions. What'd you lose?
Well, before the podcast, we're trying to plug the computer
into a thing that's not plugged in.
I told her to plug it into the wall.
No.
Oh,
this is kids.
Yeah,
kids.
You didn't listen. You had to go behind the cage.
I told her to go inside there.
She did, and she put it in the
it's a thermostat
extension cord
that's attached to a thermostat that's not plugged in.
But it's not plugged in. I'm like, why is my computer dying all of a sudden?
Anyways, we're running low on time. We're running low on time, so I want to go through a couple of things. I want to go through our question that we posted. The question this week was, in what way are you as a keeper helping support and grow the future for the reptile keepers? Which I think is what we kind of just talked about with these guys. Really growing a knowledge base for a species that is not overly known about, which I think is really cool. And also for yellow anacondas too. That's another one.
Prepared to be completely wrong on it all.
Let's go through a couple of these answers and then we'll talk about it. Kyle Graff said, I help run and act, and I'm active on quite a few reptile discords. I try to give new keepers more realistic view of what to expect than a lot of the idealistic influencer type scene to try to show. I offer constructive criticism to people who are going on outdated or plain wrong data. Mainly, though, I realize I can only guide as much as I can, but I cannot force people to be good keepers. I'll comment on that in a second. Kristen posted, I do all I can to share the information I've collected, including working with and breeding species that can be difficult. I think sharing that information is how we lift each other up. That is true. There's unfortunately still a lot of people in this hobby that tend to not want to share information.
And there's also people that don't want to listen to what is being shared.
That is also true.
Let me just get on that soapbox for a second.
They want to
Jason Green,
which is their thoughts.
Yes, they won't be able to.
You're not always right.
You'll see people post a question and then they'll disagree with the answers they get to their question because it's not the answer they were hoping to get for their question.
Exactly.
Jason Creek Moore said, spreading good, true, factual information about local reptiles, even if it gets my blood pressure up with some of the responses I get. And then our buddies over at D&T Reptikes said accountability and calling shitty people out, which I think is another thing. I'm not for just bashing people to bash people, but some people need to know stuff.
So that last, the one about the guy with the blood pressure, it made me think about something that happened. It made me think about something that happened at school today. So we were doing state testing, and so they treat it, it's practice. So they were treating it like the real thing. So when I have to go to the bathroom, I have to have a monitor come into my room to monitor my kids. And then I go to the bathroom and then I come back and they leave. My monitor didn't know that I had a snake in the classroom. And I have a corn snake. She's in a locked cage. It's got a lid on it, you know.
Do they know about the other reptiles?
Yeah, she knew about it. I mean, the guinea pigs of the window because we removed her. Remember?
Yeah.
We rearranged. So now you've got to walk into my classroom and she's on the far wall in the corner. So if you don't look into that corner, you don't really see her. One of my co-teachers who's been having meetings in my room didn't even know she was there. I'm like, she's been there since October. Anyways, so I go back to my classroom after I went to the restroom and she meets me at the door. Like she was literally standing at the door. She was no longer walking around my classroom monitoring these students. I was like, what's the matter? Is something wrong? She's like, you have a snake. And I said, I've had that snake since October. And she goes, did you have a snake last year? I was like, yep, sure did. She goes, how did I not know this? And she's like, can hardly breathe, trying not to hyperventilate. Like she's older. And I was like, well, there's a lock on her cage. She goes, I know. She said, I walked over and saw that part and knew I was safe, but I just panicked. And I was like, I'm really sorry that you panicked because there's a snake in my room. So I'm like, I'm the zoology like person. I don't understand.
So I want to go back to this long answer from Kyle. We're talking about sharing information on Facebook groups and all. That's all good. And I'm all for that. And I'm not judging Kyle in any way. I'm judging my experience. I need people who also share their information on Facebook to know that their information is not the only functional and correct information out there.
Yep.
And not the only way to do it.
Yep.
As someone who's been in the hobby,
they allowed it for the people in the back.
Longer than some of the people that have been in the hobby been alive. Some of the old things we do, and they'll say they're outdated, work.
Yeah.
And some of the new things work. And I'm not saying either one is wrong. Both can be right. But you get into some of these Facebook groups and these people latch on to this whatever new way of doing something. And I'm not saying we don't need to adapt and change because of course I have over the last 20 years of keeping. But don't bash somebody who's been doing it for over a decade or more and it's been working for them the way they do it. So that's my only problem with some of these groups. Is some of these people get in there and they're an expert after 3 months of owning a ball python. Some people just gotta tap the brakes and listen for a little bit before they chime in.
Yeah.
Just
my
two
more
cents.
than one way.
We should all be ready to be in the back seat first. Be ready to be wrong. You can be confident in what's working for you, but don't be confident that's the only thing that works. Because at the end of the day, we could all sit in the same room and we all need a different set of clothing.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean
I'm totally going to use that with my fourth graders. I'm totally going to use that line.
Well, you see it with look, I'm a minimalistic keeper because, and I've said it before, I do it. I know that there are better ways to set my animals up for whatever, but I know that by the way I keep them will allow me to also keep them well, right? I'm not going to get myself in over my head and then things start to suffer.
Oh.
But some of these people get into the hobby fairly soon fairly soon. And they latch onto this. Everything's got to be these giant cages, and they've got to be bioactive, and those are great if you can do that. But not everything has to be that way. It's not the only way. And so that's nuts. And yes, but you heard ball pythons. This is not a safe space. I'm going to shit on ball pythons.
Never a safe place.
Especially when you're here.
There's no need to shit on them. They're great.
I am Antoine.
I appreciate it. I've come to appreciate listening to them, watching them between some of the podcasts. Antoine's one of them down there that I started following just to get the information on them. But
so Antoine...
it's one of the things I don't really appreciate is everybody's just like, and I think we all, and a lot of the community's gotten there is, why do you got to go somewhere and just the instant is that bad mouth that one? I get it especially amongst like people that are in that area, especially the ball python community. Y'all are making a joke out of it now because you have to embrace it. But I see it from all aspects as others, we only work with this. Oh, it's not a ball python, this and that. So that's
Antoine
I'm still waiting on.
No, Antoine had a situation on Facebook this week that I thought was hilarious.
I didn't hear about this one.
So someone posted a green tree python that was for sale that they were upset the person was labeling it as captive bred, but the person was saying that it was wild caught, whether it was or not. And Antoine just asked, point of fact, how did this person know that it was wild caught? He wanted to know because Antoine is a ball python person, and he wanted to know, how do you know? Because Antoine said he's thinking about getting green tree pythons down the road.
Yeah.
And this person's first response was basically to shit on Antoine because he had ball pythons and doesn't want Antoine to do green trees because he assumed that he'll shove them into a drawer like ball pythons. And then he goes, and then he told Antoine you should do sand boas instead. So I chimed in.
Oh, Jesus.
As someone who does sand boas, and I was like,
oh, Jesus.
I guess I am that sand boa guy. And now I was like, now I just want to get a green tree and throw it in a Vision 35S tub and leave it in there.
Gosh.
But I just thought it was hilarious. They automatically assumed because he had ball pythons that if he got green trees, he's shoving them into a little tub like ball.
Poor Antoine.
He's just, all he said was he wanted to get one, and the guy like just shit on him right away. I was like, damn.
Go to Bill.
Oh,
Bill help you. You know
But
where to go, Antoine.
I just thought that was funny. I was like, Antoine didn't say anything about like trying to keep him in a rack and trying to breed them. He just said he wanted to get some green trees.
I mean, but that is a valid question though.
That's some
how
of
do you
the
know?
stigma that we got to get past. Is it's like, dude, let these people venture out. You wonder why they stay in their lane over there, and then you're gonna shit on them because you're jealous or whatever. When they come out, you guys treat them like shit.
So here's a question.
The community is great when you get in, but it's tough to get in sometimes.
Yeah.
I want to know now, though. I want to know, is it... My money's on you, Antoine.
I mean,
Antoine, I've been married to him for a long time.
So pretty much, Antoine said, let's hope he has the same energy when he sees him in person. You know what, Antoine? I've got the same energy because you... Never mind. I'm not going to say anything. I see you in person, Antoine. You're going down. I
was about to say there was a thing. Our listeners have no clue what is going on at all. It's all a joke, people. So laugh with us. Don't freak out.
I'm not gonna hurt Antoine.
Antoine would kill this.
Antoine's old and he's had a heart attack. I gotta leave him alone. His heart can't take it.
But make sure that I'm still on your Christmas card list. That was like my.
He didn't send out a Christmas card this year, Antoine, and I was very upset that I did not get I couldn't hang it on my wall. A semi-naked Antoine picture.
I had to flip it over so that my kid didn't see that side. But I loved getting.
That was the one time I was happy to see a ball python, Antoine.
It was fabulous.
That right now.
I think there were a lot of people happy to see ball pythons that year. A lot of us were scared to see them too.
I don't think I know anyone that is ballsy enough, pun intended, to do a Christmas card like that, and it made me happy. I loved it.
Oh,
anyway, but serious question: how do you know if something is captive bred versus wild caught unless they just tell you? Like, there's no real way to know, is there?
In some cases, no. A lot of people will assume if their animal doesn't look like this animal, then it can't be captive bred. And like green,
you can't even really do like health stuff.
Well, green trees definitely get imported. We know that, and they get sold all the time. And this one was a little skinnier, but it doesn't mean it was it could have been, it could not have been. But my thing was not even that. My thing was the guy just straight shit on Antoine
and
before anything happened.
Question.
He didn't answer anything. He just yelled at Antoine for wanting to own a green tree.
I keep thinking.
That's all right. Bill will sell you one if you can get on a waiting list and get it in 13 years.
Fourth graders deal with this shit every day, and I keep hoping they'll grow out of it. They'll grow out.
No,
of it.
they just go to Facebook.
They turn to social media as adults.
Did he just paint a ball python green, put it on a branch, and send it back and say, "Look at my captive bred"?
Oh fuck! All right, Antoine, I may Photoshop something for you.
Something's fixing to get photoshopped. Brace yourself.
Real quick, I want to run through our over on our discussion page. We normally go to our discussion page. There were some things posted this week. Oddly enough, and we'll show it in a second. There was one that came in time. Someone posted that elephant trunk snake, but this is just Nathan posted this picture of the buffalo. Says it's okay. It's almost tourist tossing season.
That's pretty funny.
I do love when animals get one up on people, especially stupid people.
Stupid people. Stupid people deserve it.
I watched a video the other day it was on Clint's Reptiles. This bear was in his yard, and he black bear, and he got right next to it, and he's like,
"The hell's wrong with him?"
Walking next to it, trying to walk it to the gate to get it out, and the bear just like kind of like leave me alone.
The bear lives there now.
He gets to the gate, and the bear like love tap, just didn't even stand all the way up, just a love tap on the side, and then he finally got up and walked away, and then he pulled his shirt up and just sliced right down the side. I was like,
yeah.
Leave wild animals alone.
My mom sent me a video, and I did not repost this because I didn't need to be reposted. But it's like this woman swimming with an alligator or something. Like she gets in the water and like coaxes. I'm like, I'm not even watching this. She's dumbass. I refuse to watch this.
All that stuff's great as long as the animals are fed.
I'm like,
the moment they're not fed,
even if they're not fed, they are wild animals.
But they well, it was actually
before the feeding. We're good.
Yeah. Where she loses an arm.
There was one. Clint showed a video of it was, I think in like Indonesia somewhere. It was one of those villages where they have a large croc that comes in.
This was a dumb American.
But they have a large croc that comes into this village, and the guy's down in the water with it, and like he's actually splashing around the croc's mouth. And I mean, if you've ever been around crocodilians, if something hits near their mouth, they immediately go to bite it, and they ask questions later. And it didn't. This croc obviously has grown up there, knew the people, and I've never thought of the way Clint said that this is a positive. Because this happens a lot. You see it in South America, and you see it sometimes in parts of Indonesia where these large crocs have come into these villages and they've fed them for years. I never thought about the fact that croc kind of protects that village.
Yeah.
It's a large male croc, and it's keeping other large male crocs out of that area. And so if these people know how to handle and be around this one croc, it's safer to fish. It's safer to live. It's safer. I mean, we always worry about, don't feed the animals because then they get used to food, but you watch some of these videos and these people interact with these crocodilians in ways that you just don't think. I mean, they're much smarter animals than I think people give them credit for.
It's funny you say that because I don't know about alligators, but like for snakes, you always tell me not to. What's the big word?
Anthropomorphize.
Yeah, I have no brain cells at this point in the night. I apologize, Tony. But yeah, and my dad, who was terrified of snakes, when he would give tours to new members at his hunting camp, he would always take them into the barn, and he would be like, corn snake. I forget what my dad like gave it a name, but he was like, the corn snake that lives over there, you kill it, you're out, because it keeps care of the mice in here. You leave him alone, he leaves you alone. That's how we function. And so like my dad was very much, obviously it's not a giant crocodile that they're swimming with, and it's just a little harmless corn snake.
He didn't go boop it on the snoot.
He did not. No.
Just let me go through these real quick. Jason Moore posted, I need to go watch this. This is an actual video, so I don't have to read. But it was why are these urban lizards evolving in overdrive, which kind of looks interesting. Forest anoles versus city anoles. Been interesting if anybody wants to go watch that. Try to go through some of these. Oh, this was just I posted this. These are some of the finalists for the 2017. The photos of 2017 comedy wildlife. It was just some funny wildlife.
Hilarious though.
Just perfect timing. Some of these pictures. This is someone being chased by a king brown snake, kind of being chased as they kind of put their foot in its face to piss it off on purpose.
You're antagonizing that snake.
We'll loosely call that being chased by a snake.
Whatever.
This one was funny. Every snake's a copperhead until someone sees a copperhead, and then it's something else. In this case, a ball python. That's about right. Every time someone sees it's a cottonmouth or a copperhead, and you're like, it never is. Oh, here's the picture. This one got posted this week, and I thought it was very good since we were having you on. But that's the giant ass. I mean, look at that thing.
Yeah, I want to know how big those tiles are for everybody's comparison. That's what everybody can see in comparison. What's the tile?
So here's the thing though, because go back to that other picture. So
That's gotta be a 2
24
foot by 2 foot.
your average
Yeah.
foot, like, because I wear a women's
Yep.
I wear women's 12, which is a men's 10, and my foot is 12 inches from front
That's
to back.
either that's got to be 2 foot. I don't think. I think
If
it's
that's
bigger.
a 12 foot,
That's bigger than 18 inches. I think.
Yeah.
The tile.
if that's a 12-inch
Yeah,
foot,
I think
yeah.
they're 2 foot tiles.
And I mean, that
They're
snake
about
could
2
fit on that
foot.
tile. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. It could fit on that tile so many ways. Yeah, that's an 8-foot snake easy.
Yeah. That
And
thing's
just
gorgeous.
Massive.
Yeah, as I
with
said,
the-
that was the one that initially I saw, and I'm looking at the tiles, and I'm like, my big one might be about that size. And then I got home, I looked in as I got home from work, and I looked down, and I was like, no, you're at least you're half that size, and I think you're huge right now. I'm gonna need a bigger pond.
I just love it. Big body, still a little bitty head.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty good size head.
It's just those little
as I
tiny
said,
eyes. It's those little
I would
eyes.
suspect that's probably Gravid also at that time.
It's gotta be.
But she is
Yeah.
very
That's cool.
It's so big.
Thing is gorgeous.
I posted this
Wait till
picture.
Dan gets back to California. I want to ask him so many questions.
Just send Dan a message. Hey Dan, can you throw that in a bag and send it on over?
No. After saying it, no. Put that in his pond. He's working on stuff at a pond over there, a whole property. Yeah, you can have that. But keep me updated so I know what to expect when I've got mine there.
Yes. I posted this picture for our listener Jack, who's planning on a visit to Texas. Just to give him an idea of the size of Texas over Europe, because I'm like, people from outside of Texas will be like, I'm going to visit Texas. I'm like, that's great. You might want to plan it out, because it's not like I'm going to go to Dallas and then I'm going to go to wherever. Like, it's not a day trip kind of state.
Oh,
So,
come on.
It takes a little bit. You're gonna have to plan it out. Like if you're coming to Houston, it's great, but then you're also not going to Amarillo. That's not gonna happen. This is just I forget the dumbass's name that does this, but he gets bit by stuff and he gets bit by a snapping turtle. What a moron. Our friend Megan is doing the was that already?
That was
today.
tonight.
Oh,
Yeah, it
tonight.
was actually the same time as
During
the
this? Oh,
podcast.
screw
It's
you.
because we're not
Screw
normally
you,
on
Megan.
Wednesdays.
Just kidding.
We're
That
not
is true. We're not normally on Wednesdays.
But we had
Oh, so this is all over. This is all over Facebook.
He blames you.
It's your fault in Girl Scouts. So,
he always blames me.
so this guy, we've talked about this with several people on here. We've talked about it with Chris Dieter, who owns Croc Encounters, and we've talked about it with what was it, Critchlow Alligator Sanctuary. When we talked about owning alligators is ridiculous for most places, and this guy in New York owned this alligator. And what's the problem is I've seen pictures in the video where they show it as a baby. As a baby, it was shaped normal, so obviously the care fucked it up. But if you look at this, you can go, well, that doesn't look right. And everybody look at the faces. Go ahead.
The thing with that one's a tough one for me, because unlike most of the community, that gator's got the proper enclosure and setup.
The problem is probably diet
Problem
and
is
temperature.
It's been overly loved.
Well, and you look around the spot.
Still fed in every college guy. Hey, you're coming over. You want to feed it for a case of beer.
Well, the other problem I have is and I've watched several videos. I don't see a true basking spot like an alligator needs. I'm willing to bet there's nowhere in there that gets 100 degrees. It can't go sit out and get 100 degrees and then go in the water and cool. Like, it's probably room temperature or whatever the sun comes through those windows. It's just,
I'd struggle with making that claim, just because at how much work went into that, just from and based off the photo. Obviously, there's no preference on what actually is into it. I didn't dig into that article. I saw it on scrolling. Didn't dig into it. I would think at how well that enclosure, that setup is, that they at least went far enough, especially at how old that animal is. They probably have a proper heating setup.
I don't know.
Probably have everything going. At some point, that animal stopped getting exercise, stimulated, and
you look at the way the face grew. That's
probably from a smaller enclosure when it was younger.
Ed and Emily have one as well over at Snake Discovery. That was one of these situations that had been in a house for 20, 30 years, and it is now only like 5 foot long. but it has that same squatty face, and it definitely looks. Look, I think that setup in there could be tweaked a little bit, but I've always said if we had a pond, I'd want to put an alligator, or a pool, I'd want to put an alligator in it.
Yeah.
But what always kills me is like we can't own them here. And it would be so much better to own an alligator here in Texas than it would be to own one in New York or Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah. No, well, again, he wasn't allowed to own it there.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I've run into friends. Hell, I got people at work that have said their uncles have owned alligators and stuff out in California. You can't own them.
Oh yeah.
I'm definitely, like I said, I'm not justifying yay or nay, but I can't. Unfortunately, I feel bad for the guy, especially the story is it's been a pet. You got animals like that, someone that's gone through something like the Lacey Act and had that threat of your animal can be taken no matter what you put into it. Are there signs of neglect and problems? Yes. In New York, if he's owned for that long, the chances of a period of time it not getting properly housed, cared for, and all of that, absolutely significantly likely, especially 30, 20 years ago, whatever. Unfortunately, the problem with the story is the condition it's got now. Some questions still remain, but is the care necessarily neglect or anything like that? So I have the only thing I can say on it is I feel bad for the guy, because put yourself in that situation.
Well, he's lost. Yeah, he's lost.
You lost something that's 30 years in. That's a family member.
Yeah.
You've lost potentially a kid, a parent, something like that in conjunction in a different aspect. So I feel for that aspect, but unfortunately I don't know enough of the story to say. I wouldn't want to bash somebody on something and then find out later that, hey, they actually did everything and some of those conditions were prior.
I get that. This is another one. Our buddy Travis Wyman posted this beetle that found, this hairy beetle, this weird fluffy hairy beetle.
Oh,
whoa, calm down.
I didn't get to tell you about my recess adventures.
I'm worried
hairy
now.
beetles remind you of recess.
Yes.
I bet.
So you know those caterpillars that are like 3 inches long and are like huge and fluffy and black?
I mean, there's a lot of them like that, but yes.
Okay, so I saved one from getting stepped on, and then I yeeted it over the fence.
So you saved it and then launched it toward.
I did not really.
It probably got ate by a bird. Got it.
No. I just moved it from the playground space to the other side of the fence.
Yeah. Kids, don't kill it. This bird, though.
I walked a fair distance with that sucker balanced on my cell phone because I had
Travis Wyman also
posted.
Travis posted this article about snake steaks could be a climate-friendly source of protein.
What?
I'm
gonna pass.
I wouldn't pass.
No.
If it was like berms out of like Florida, I'd eat that.
I don't know that we're that far off, and it's an Asian market already, isn't it?
It probably is. You're right.
Oh, look, they eat if it moves, they eat it.
I mean, horse is eating.
As strange as it is for all those and I don't know that this is where they're going, but stepping back and looking at arguments and where possible logical paths would go is for all those people arguing climate change on the cows are doing it, this and that.
Yeah.
This would be an easy substitute, reliable, and how many people are already saying, what's going on with the retics? What's going on with the retics? What's going on with retics? It's already a sustainable Asian market. They're significant in size, and figure the size of a steak, thickness of a steak, the girth of a reticulate. I'm not saying I'm eating a retic.
I guess my problem
is
I say I'd eat it.
That naturally cooks it. I may try it just to say I tried it. I'm not going down the street and going, "Hey, Brandon, let me take peaches. Let me dice them up." And we're going.
My problem is like I'd say I'd eat it, but I also am one that refuses to eat alligator.
You don't need
or frog.
I would eat it
or turtle.
I would try it. And the opportunities to try, you're not the one deciding the fate of that animal in those situations. If it was
if it's already done. Yeah.
Well, if it was an Asian market that I go down there and decide, hey, that one's swimming in the tank, let me take that one. That's a different story. But if I'm going up somewhere, and, hey, it's on the menu. Guess what? I didn't. Its fate was determined. There was no. Whether I did it or not, the tree still got chopped down. The paper was made. Somebody's going to write on it.
That makes sense.
I have the opportunity. I can try it, say I did or I did not like it. Sustainably, it makes sense. longevity. I don't know what meat tastes like, what the food tastes like, but it makes sense.
I mean, it makes
you're
talking about animals. Well, you're talking about animals that lay 40, 50 eggs at a time.
Exactly.
Like that's
significant. You know what? It opens the breeding market to another side. I mean, FFA is a huge thing. Goes through schools, goes
There's
through scholarships.
tons of rabbits that are sold specifically
FFA
for
puts
meat.
people through college, school, and careers. Add that into the same thing. There's a whole industry. You're not taking away from it. You're just expanding it. The problem that those individuals are going to have is you're not talking wholesale. You're talking meat market.
Yeah.
And that's the price.
And that's
difference.
a totally different.
You've also got the struggle of PETA and all of that. But that's just that other. Open your eyes to look at it. It makes sense long-term sustainably.
I'd love to see PETA actually fight for the rights of snakes. That's just not, they're not fluffy, so they don't tend to fight for anything that's not fluffy and cute.
Yeah, they'll take away from them typically. So circling back to like you were talking earlier about the Savannah monitors, their low price. Looking from devil's advocate side of it, I actually look at that as a potential positive on the end that's an alternate source for some of these animals that naturally eat lizards.
Yeah.
You have a larger animal that could go that route that, hey, there's animals from that area that this can now be reasonably a food source. Not, hey, let me throw a rodent that's not anywhere near their area. Let me not do this. If we can get somebody that does that, you have that. Hey, I have a species that feeds on the natural prey.
Yeah.
Oh, oddly, it seems to be doing it. It's not, hobby, again, just like the other, it's not the hobby ideal. It's not not what everybody wants to hear. But when we talk,
as a hobby, we try to make things fit in our box. And you have a snake and elephant trunk snakes, they're not going to be rodent eaters. Like it's just not going to happen. That's not what they're eating.
No, and not everybody's going to own them. Not everybody should have them.
Yeah.
But it's not to say that people shouldn't be informed about them. They shouldn't be aware of them. But at the same time, they should be informed, or if in situations where they take off, the pet market is very useful in that situation. If it gets to the point where it's that low or that readily available, they pick it up from that point. And they get that now as a new introduction species. If you get that as the introduction species, education starts there. Bad education, good education, education, still attention. And it gets that mind started. So it's a positive if you spin it or you look at it on the positive. Everything, especially nowadays and in the social side, you can always look at that as a bad.
All right, we have hit the well over 2 hours now.
I know. I think our kid might still be doing homework too.
Oh, well, you can help her with that.
I know. That's who I've been texting. I'm like, yeah, I think she's still doing homework, but I think she's moved on to math.
My pre-dinner chocolate chip cookies have gone. Now I need to have actual dinner, non-chocolate chip cookies.
You're such a
mess. Tony, if people want to get a hold of you and talk about yellow anacondas or penis snakes, the elephant trunk snakes, if they want to talk to you, where can they get a hold of you?
Revision Reptiles on Instagram and on Facebook. Tony Doerrer is also another one. That's just my natural one to get directly a hold of me. Otherwise, that's the extent I've got. I've been slacking on the other stuff. I need to eventually get a website, but this is
I don't even have
side project stuff and after work. And again, it's more passion projects that when you have multiple, suddenly 1 + 1 = 2. And that's where that's kind of grown into. So it's sharing that. So Instagram, Facebook, Revision Reptiles.
Yeah, go check them out on Instagram. There's a ton of, or on Facebook, there's a ton of videos of all the elephant trunk snakes and lots of really cool stuff to see there.
I try to share as much as I can. I used to be better about videos, night vision videos and all that on the tanks. Should be starting that back up before long, but I try to share as much video and share as much as I can. I want the good, the bad, and the ugly to be shared just so that people getting into these, as we said earlier, most people's introductions, that cute little tiny handful snake. There's not many people that show you that large pond or that big snake that's the size Dan showed you. So I want to give here's what's cute and adorable. Here's what the result is in a couple years if you just do what you're supposed to, and then here's the reality of a successful or an adult animal. And
it's a cool one. Like that's, I would love to. I've never seen an adult or felt an adult one in person, so I'm gonna have to hopefully at some point do that.
If you're ever out in California, give me a heads up. Southern California.
Yeah.
We can make that happen. That's easy enough. I enjoy sharing them for people just to get that experience. It's not something you can see in every collection. I don't want it to be seen.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
I think for a lot of collections and a lot of those big breeders that are successful in a lot of the stuff, if you are looking for that one just display animal you can sit back and watch, you don't want to hold, you don't want to do much to, they make such impressive and just fascinating display animals. But it's not, the reality is I don't see most keepers wanting multiples, having multiples, or keeping multiples.
I think Antoine
this is gonna be that species that one should be awesome. Antoine, we can get you one of these instead of that green tree python. I mean, this will be highly more active.
And then you can just put it in a rack, Antoine. They fit well in the rack system.
Oh my
Go
God.
ahead.
They work in racks. We can work you out. I've done that test. I get you
That's
set up. It's a
hilarious
little
that you
more
said that.
stressful, a little more intricate. As I said, I wanted to push the envelope, and this is what it is. This is the reality of where the hobby, if it goes full time, is going to likely look. What's the reality? It works. It's definitely much trickier.
It's just
and nobody's going to want it because of how tricky it is. It can be done. You just honestly need data loggers, thermostats, and to leave it alone. Because it comes down to just the stability of the water, and a tub is not meant to have enough water to hold the temperature.
Right.
You just don't get water flow there.
Yeah.
So water flow is not a big deal because you can swap it out every couple days, or you can get a small flow filter. Fish, they're going to dirty it up, but it's not that it can't be done. It's just, again, keepers don't want that.
Yeah. Everyone listening, don't forget, we are going to have our giveaway. It'll start April 1st. I'll post it. You can win 500 small dubias from Lil's Shop of Horrors, and you can get that awesome feeder food from our friends over at Reddy's Rainforest. We'll have that set up for you on our Facebook page come April 1st. If you need light bulbs, check out VivTech products. Use code Gumbo22, save 15%. Go buy a light bulb. I just bought some light bulbs. You go buy some. Check out Herp's Reptile shows near you. If you're in this area, they'll be near you. And I think that's it. Tony, thanks for coming on. Hang out for a second. Everybody else that's watching, thank y'all for watching. We will be back.
Thank you.
Next.
Great to see you. Thank you very much, guys.
And anybody listen, come back next week because we're gonna be talking. I know this is weird for me to say, and I almost throw up in my mouth a little bit.
I know what it is.
We're gonna be talking ball pythons. We're gonna have a fairly large ball python guy on next week.
Funny.
And we'll talk. I'm gonna have to try to be good
on Tuesday
and not make fun of them.
Ball pythons.
Well, we're gonna talk about pythons.
So come on, folks.
We'll be back next.
Royal pythons.
Royal
pythons.
Gotta make them sound better.
Oh
we can upscale them because we call them royal pythons.
Oh, is that how it works?
All right. See y'all later. Thanks y'all for watching. Good night.